afternoon, all. Thank you for attending again today. Yes, okay. Thank you for attending today's meeting on the Utility Advisory Committee. We'll now call the meeting to order. And Shannon, I get, so just confirmation on the posting.
You have to get closer to the mic.
Okay. But we can call due to technicalities. Sorry. So roll call. I guess we'll just call. Start with Greg. Just Andy.
Hi, I'm here.
Larry Carr. Chair. Eileen.
Here.
And Howard.
Here.
So we are missing Ned Shamu and Marty Royal. Okay, so we will start the public comment period. So if anybody would like to, was there any comments? No call, no email? Okay, great. And so we open the public comment period. I guess if you put it on the screen. Thank you. So if anybody would like to call in, this is on the agenda items for the meeting today. And that is 702-589-9629. Again, that's on the only for the agenda items for today. Okay, one more time. The phone number is 702-589-9629 if anybody wants to comment on the agenda action items. Okay, hearing no comments, then we'll move on to the agenda. And it's been requested that we move item number 2 to item number 3, and item number 3 to item number 2. Is there any other suggested changes or recommendations?
No other changes.
Okay, so if no further, we will accept the agenda. We'll go to item number 1 for possible action. Approval of the June 15th, 2022 Utility Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes?
No.
I didn't see anything of any problems either myself, so I move to approve the minutes from June 15th.
Second.
Everybody approve, say aye. Aye. Anybody, any nays? It moves unanimously. Okay, so then we will go to item number 3, update on ongoing capital improvement projects and utility fund capital projects year to date provided by staff. So Joe, I'll let you lead that.
Sure. Yeah, so we're going to get the dashboard up here on the screen with from the Tableau, and I'll give you guys pretty abbreviated update with just some highlights with the projects that are happening. Hang on just a sec. There we go. So for the golf course estates on the water, that project has been awarded. That's moving along. The ABC sewer upgrade project, the plans and specs have been signed off. That'll be looking to go to bid here shortly. The copper service replacements, a couple of projects to update on that. Have Sandra and Tamarisk are some updates that went out to bid. It's kind of some small ticket items. So that covers the water and sewer. Moving on to electric at the Red Mountain, that upgrade project. 3 more poles are to be set. 2 more that we requested in the next few weeks to a month. That project should be complete. Got 92% of the wire and fiber pulled for that circuit. For the San Felipe to Mendota Circuit 53 project, that project is back on schedule, has caught up. So last meeting reported that it got behind a little bit. They were able to catch back up on schedule on that. And then the BC TAP to Buchanan went through the punch list with the contractor. You may see the adjustments that they made to that problematic pole, that structure 31, so that they do believe that they've regrouted that in and set that plumb. So what they're doing is kind of setting that to hopefully be a permanent fix. So hopefully there's no complaints or issues on that. But I went out there, looked just before this meeting, looked good to me. So they're having it set, and that's pretty much it as far as updates on the ongoing CIP. So if there's any questions that anyone on the committee has, I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Greg?
Good morning. Is this my phone?
She's got me.
No, there it is. Okay, I visited the Coffee Cup on Monday, and the dead-end pole over there by the Boulder City Company store. We've got cable pulled in to it, and the birds want to thank you because they're making nests in the pole. So we might want to get that sealed up before we have a problem with the Audubon Society. They've pulled the cable in. There's no boot on the steel pole to pull the cable through. They've terminated the cable, and now it's wide open, and the birds are living in it. So
Okay.
that's something that needs to be looked at. I don't know who's responsible for it, but it's a dead-end pole
Is
there.
that an ongoing CIP project that we have right now?
Don't know. It's the old, what is it?
Unfortunately, that's the way the pole was designed, so we're going to have to do some kind of mitigation, but as of right now, it'll be like that until we come up with a ready-made fix. But
Yeah,
the pole was designed like that for both of the incoming conduit pools or
Yeah.
run pools. So we have addressed that. We are addressing that, and we are aware of it, so yes.
Yeah, I was surprised. I'd been gone for several weeks, and it came back, and it looked beautiful. It was dead-ended, and everything was removed on the street and everything. And then I'm looking up, and I hear the birds raising heck.
Yeah.
I see one of them flying in there with all kinds of twigs and stuff, and I'm going, oh, that's not good.
No.
So, I mean, if we were to just get a tin knocker up there and build something out of tin or something to prevent them, that would be good. But, I just want to let you guys all know that they are making nests in the poles. We need to look at that for the other ones too. So,
Yep, we are aware of that, and like I said, that will be addressed, but unfortunately for that particular pole, that was the design. It was not designed with wire chute, so
Right.
we knew we'd have to be dealing with that after everything was said and done,
yeah,
so yes.
okay, I just want to let you guys know because that's just an ongoing project of the reconductor into downtown.
Thank you. Anything else on the ongoing? I just have one comment, so and probably we can talk about it more because see in the August meeting we can probably then be looking more at the ongoing and then the future. So we'll be incorporating the new SIP. I'm assuming we'll be able to talk about the new SIP, the fiscal year 23 SIP
Yes.
in August. So, but right now, the copper that was, I think I asked before, I'm just confirming, the copper that was spent, the money spent on the copper water line, so the water project relating to the copper replacements, that should go back into, the money should be returned to the funds, I guess, from ARPA. Is that correct? We should be getting some funds from ARPA for the money that was spent this year?
The entire fiscal year 23 and 24 water and sewer projects are all funded out of the ARPA.
But I believe the 21, there's a statement in there that 21 funds that were spent can also be reimbursed.
Okay.
So I just want to check on that with the copper line.
Copper replacements, okay.
So, because I thought that was one of the ones that was allowed to be used. So I'm just something to check on.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so thank you for the update.
Yeah, appreciate you guys letting me kind of adjust the agenda for that, so thank you.
No problem. So we will go to back to item number 2, presentation by SNWA and Las Vegas District regarding water conservation.
Okay, so just wanted to introduce Colby Pellegrino. She's the Deputy General Manager for Resources for SNWA and the Las Vegas Valley Water District. We're very excited and happy that you're here to join us. Thanks, Colby.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Mr. Carr, for having me back. So I was asked to just give a brief update on our current drought response and what we're trying to do to get the community at large prepared for future reductions that are coming our way.
Colby, just a quick question. Is it okay if we ask per slide? Is that okay?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So just setting the stage, I think you guys are probably well aware of this, but we are the driest metropolitan area in the United States, getting about 4 inches of rain in any given year. And we are nearly fully reliant on the Colorado River to meet the community's demands. Some of our communities, like Boulder City, are completely reliant on the Colorado River to meet their demands. And since 2000, inflows have been below normal as we work through this historic drought, which is looking more and more like the normal for the future. You can see that while we have had a few high years, they have not been enough to reverse the trend or make up for the deficit, leaving us about 16 trillion gallons below what the historical average has been. This has led to our first intake that was built to supply water to Boulder City and the Valley surfacing. You can now see that infrastructure more and more each day off of Saddle Island in Lake Mead. A big driver of why we our third intake was potentially losing this intake, and if we drop below elevation 1,000, our third intake. So as we look to the future of the Colorado River, our resource planning as we look to protect the supply of our communities takes into consideration a wide range of future hydrologic conditions. Currently, we model an 11 million acre-foot inflow projection into Lake Mead, with most climate scientists telling us we may be looking at an inflow between 9 and 11 million acre-feet in the future. When you look at this chart for what Lake Mead's elevation might be through that type of hydrology, you'll see these points where it flatlines just below 900 feet. That's because Lake Mead is empty. That's what we call dead pool. So if we get significantly the same hydrology as we've experienced the last 4 or 5 years, Lake Mead will empty very quickly, and it will remain empty throughout the foreseeable future.
Quick on that slide. So what you're saying is that, now is this projection on the 9 and the 11 or just on the 11?
This is just the 11.
So this is just if the 11. So can you explain?
You can't get any drier if you go to 9.
I understand. I'm just making sure I understand it.
Yeah.
And then can you explain the lines, please? I didn't see
Yeah, so the
clear
3 lines that are there are the existing shortages that are described in today's policy. We take shortage reductions at 1075, 1050, and 1025 with mandatory renegotiations if we fall below that red line. This assumes that our policy increases the shortages that we're required to take if we drop below 1025. But obviously, there's also a lot of uncertainty about the amount of use that will occur by all of the other states should we drop below that red line.
Okay, so the major red line then is what you're saying at 11 million
Yes,
feet
that's
is what
the
you're
lake
projecting it to go,
elevation.
that somewhere between 25 and 26, it gets really nasty.
Yes, exactly.
2025 and 2026. Then the last one on that, so the intake number 3, what's the elevation of that?
So intake number 3 is at elevation 875. And we're able to pump water that low, meaning that once Lake Mead reaches dead pool, we'll still have water over our intakes. We hope that that never occurs, but in the eventuality that it does, we will still be able to pull some water off of the lake.
Okay, so it says elevation. I was just wanting to make sure I understood the dead pool and that elevation correctly.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Colby, I have a question. So the second intake is at 10,000 feet, or 1,000 feet, correct?
Correct.
And then, so then after 10,000 or 1,000 feet, does water go through the dam? So the downstream users, when do they run, when does that dry up for them?
Water will continue to flow through the dam until about somewhere between 890 and 900 feet.
Okay.
So our intake infrastructure is not tied to the dam at all. It's in a completely separate location. Even if we lose intake 2, intake 3 makes up all the operational capacity of intakes 1 and 2.
Right.
So we won't experience a reduced supply even if we lose intake number 2.
But my point, I want to try to figure out is the downstream users lose water at
dead pool.
900.
Yeah.
Which is considered the dead pool?
Yeah.
Okay. And after that, our water supply just depends on water demand then, right?
Well, I think the likelihood of the Secretary of Interior not stepping in to take action that low, and I'll get to that in a couple slides, is fairly minimal. I think they're going to take some action before then to keep us from hitting dead pool.
Correct.
I can't imagine we would get to dead pool and be allowed to use our full allocation, but we would at least have the ability to deliver water into the community.
Right. Okay, I'll wait for your other presentation then.
So this is just some modeling projections that the Bureau of Reclamation has done in support of taking some near-term actions to protect Lake Mead's water supply. So they use 2 different scenarios here. The numbers and percentages aren't super meaningful. It's just meant to show 2 historical droughts repeating themselves over the next several years and what that does to Lake Mead's elevation. So as you can see, that darker green line is very similar to what happens in the first couple years of our resource planning scenario, that we just see Lake Mead continue to plummet to the point that we're hitting dead pool in 2025 or 2026. With slightly better than average inflow, we would expect to continue to go into those deeper shortage levels, still having to negotiate new policy, but not quite getting to dead pool in Lake Mead. The 76% of normal, I would say, despite that saying 76% of normal is still pretty ambitious. We have not seen that kind of runoff in recent years. And as the basin continues to dry and warm, it's requiring even more precipitation to create the same runoff that the same amount of precipitation created previously. So we're in the process right now of planning for these more drastic scenarios of what the future might look like. And just to that end, both John Ensminger, the general manager of the Southern Nevada Water Authority, and Commissioner Camille Touton of Reclamation presented to the Senate 3 weeks ago, the United States Senate. During her testimony, the Commissioner of Reclamation said essentially that 2 to 4 million acre feet of additional water is needed next year to protect critical levels in Lake Mead. So that's a challenge she's given to the states, is to come up with a plan to reduce our use by 2 to 4 million acre feet next year. To put that into context, Southern Nevada uses 250,000 acre feet of water. It would require, if it were taken across the board, over 20% reduction of every single water user on the Colorado River. So the magnitude of the problem we're facing right now is very large.
Sorry, just to repeat just make sure I understood what you said in the slide. So this is the full Colorado, this is upper and lower basin, the 2 million and 4 million, not just
Yes.
the lower basin that's being requested. Okay, just making sure I
Correct.
understood. I thought that was,
But to put it into context, we have about 14 to 14.5 million acre feet of use. About 4 of that is in the upper basin. So if you just want to look proportionally, the bulk of it has to fall on the lower basin.
no, I understand, but we do have a little bit, we also have 1.5 in Mexico.
Correct.
And so and I know that's a very political problem too. So how much I believe.
Yeah,
in the last-
Mexico's been a good partner, though. They've stepped up prior to the states, actually, the last time to agree to reductions. So I think, I don't think Mexico's going to be hard, but you never know.
Thank you.
Can you explain the upper and lower basin, just for clarification?
Sure.
what that means?
So there's 7 states that share the Colorado River. The upper basin is formed Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Colorado. The lower basin, Arizona, California, Nevada, and Mexico gets thrown in with the lower basin. So we each have a contractual right through the compact. The upper basin gets 7.5 million acre feet of water. The lower basin gets 7.5 million acre feet of water. And Mexico gets 1.5 million acre feet of water. Throughout recent history, the lower basin states and Mexico have taken their full allocation every single year. And the upper basin it has actually stayed pretty stable for the last decade or so, using, anywhere in the high 3s to 4.5 million acre feet a year. So we've obviously been working on drought for decades. I think if using 1.8% of the allocated water on the river has served any greater purpose to the basin states, I think it's to show them that really hard things can be done. And we continue to be a leader there in bringing on new conservation programs and adapting to the future. So we have been working to reduce our demands, negotiate with the basin states, looking at alternate supplies, and making sure we have infrastructure. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on those, because I'm going to spend most of this looking at the water conservation activities we're specifically taking to prepare the community. So we have to be more resilient to drought. And when you think of our community and the way we use water, outdoor use is the #1 consumptive use of water in the valley. We have return flow credits in the majority of the valley except Boulder City. So unless you are on septic or you live in Boulder City, anything you're using indoors is getting treated and returned back to Lake Mead. That does not count against our allocation. If you are in Boulder City or you're on a septic system, then all of your water is consumptive use. But because of that dynamic, we focus almost exclusively on turf, because turf is where we lose water from that closed loop of the drain back to Lake Mead from the rest of the Las Vegas Valley. And even without the returns from Boulder City, that's still the biggest consumptive use of water here. The second largest one, I would say, is cooling. But you can see that the future needs to be more sustainable. It needs to look different, particularly outdoors. So in December, we approved a new water resource plan. Embedded in that new water resource plan is a new water conservation goal of 86 gallons per person per day. And then we went through a whole bunch of measures that will help us get to that 86 gallons per person per day. Just to put that into perspective a little bit, our current gallons per capita per day across our entire service area is about 110 to 112. Boulder City's is over 600. So we are having to need to do more across the board to get our consumptive use of water down.
Yeah, the only thing is we're not necessarily apples and apples when you say that 600 gallons of water. It's not the same criteria Boulder City has that the valley has. So we need to conserve, there's no doubt, but I don't think it's apples and apples, and even some of your...
Those numbers are apples to apples.
I think they
yes.
are, Larry. They are apples
They
to
are.
apples. I've looked at it. It's apples to apples. She's right. Most of our water is used by, the two people are the people, and the consumptive use or the use for irrigation purposes are the two largest users for the city. It amounts to over 65% of the water being used for that purpose.
We have about a third of the water. I guess I don't want to get into too much of an argument, but I think the way that the golf courses and possibly even the parks use the water is different than the valley, because it's more of our water is used for that. So if you're saying if we're responsible for what's used at the golf courses and stuff like that, then it is. But if I read one of your statements right, the golf courses in the valley is about 6%, and our golf courses are about 30%.
So the way that it's calculated, just to be clear, for the whole valley, we take the consumptive use of water. So that's the amount of groundwater, the amount of Colorado River water that we're consumptively using, and we divide it by the number of people. It doesn't matter whether it's going to a golf course, whether it's going to a hotel, whether it's going to a school, or whether it's going to somebody's home. We do the same for Boulder City. The amount of water it consumptively uses divided by the people. That's how we get the number. It's apples to apples across the board.
Well, yeah, okay.
Does the valley include the return flow credits?
Yes, because the consumptive use of water is the amount of water you're depleting from the system.
Right.
So in that sense, the return flow credits are accounted on both sides.
There is none for Boulder City.
Correct.
And there is some for, okay, thank you.
But there is, I think we need to look at that. We have a permit, our NPDES permit gives us the opportunity to use it for irrigation purposes. And all the water could be used for that. People talking about infrastructure to recycle it and everything. But if we could find customers like the solar power plant or someone like that to use it, I think we could make an argument to get that used as a return flow credit. We talk about the aquifers and all that business. But to me, I mean, I would be a little bit more stubborn on this and saying it's just like everybody in the valley putting it on a golf course. We could do the same thing here. If we could get rid of that 1.5 million gallons of water a day, roughly less than that actually, it's about 1.25 million gallons of water a day. And I think we could argue to get some sort of credit. It's a small amount, but it is what is being used for consumptive use. So that is something we should probably investigate and see if we could somehow get that credited to us. And it would help. It would be, be something. But majority of the water is still used for irrigation purposes here.
No, I'm just trying to understand the facts. I'm just trying to make sure everything is clear and trying to keep apples and apples and saying, so I understand Boulder City needs to do certain things. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just trying to understand.
Yep, happy to help.
So the same type thing on the cooling efficiency, and maybe you're going to get to that. Are we talking about just the swamp coolers, or are we talking about the businesses with the coolers, or is it anything using water for cooling
both.
purposes? Okay.
Yeah, and I think I have a slide coming up that'll talk about it. So these are the major efforts that we're focusing on as ways to reduce our consumptive uses, and I'm going to go through them each individually. So we are working with all of our member agencies to update their codes and ordinances to be the most drought resilient and sustainable community that we can be. And we're in various levels of process of implementing all of these new measures that I'm about to step through. I would say our popularity rating has decreased across the board, in part because the approach that we're taking right now is that all water use sectors need to conserve. So as we look through these next things that we're doing, there's not any one that the people that they're impacted by like. And I think that's important as we talk about how hard things need to be done it's really important for us to be uniform in how we do them. And we find that the greatest way we get the public support and buy-in to do the things we need them to do at their home, like fixing their leaks right away or changing their watering clock, involve that community spirit of everyone pitching in to do their part. So the first one is prohibition of new grass. So the SNWA board has passed a resolution saying that no new grass should be installed except at schools, parks, and cemeteries. This has been implemented by the Las Vegas Valley Water District, which covers about 70% of our member agencies, and will be going before Henderson and North Las Vegas in the coming weeks. The next iteration of that is that new landscapes must meet size and location requirements. So as we implemented Assembly Bill 356 from the legislature requiring us to define non-functional turf, we took those same definitions that were put together by a citizens committee and put them into our service rules. So new turf needs to be in places that it's going to be played on and that it's safe to be played on. So this means it's away from streets, it's accessible for people, it's not located on slopes, it's not in silly places like medians or streetscapes, and it's not in places that it's just aesthetic. So as I mentioned, AB 356 prohibits watering non-functional turf after 2026. And that is just what you see here, this little strip of turf that's on a slope between the sidewalk and the street. No one recreating there, not a safe place to be, and using about 73 gallons a square foot, whereas the alternative landscaping on the right uses about 18 gallons per square foot. So huge savings from taking out that non-functional turf. This is just a little definition walkthrough from what the committee came up with. So functional turf is, again, those areas that are easily accessible. They're 1,500 contiguous square feet. They're located at least 10 feet from a street and at least 30 feet in all dimensions. Functional turf is in athletic fields, program fields, cemeteries, golf course play areas, next to playgrounds, and in multifamily properties where tenants are able to use it for recreation. Non-functional turf is those areas that aren't described above, whether they don't meet the dimensional criteria, they're on slopes, they're next to streets, but just generally speaking, if you look at a piece of turf and say, I wouldn't let my kid play ball there, that's non-functional turf. Any questions on that?
I guess the, one confusing aspect is I don't believe that the non-functional turf applies to existing residents. Is that what I understand?
It does not apply to single-family residences.
Single okay. So yes. What about the one seems to be a little bit confusing is the median. So right now, I don't know how much Vegas has, but Boulder City does have some where you have grass in between the sidewalk and the street. And
that all has to be removed.
It's on the city land. If I understand, the city owns it, but the property owner is responsible for it.
Yeah, that all has to be removed.
Okay, so I think that needs to be clear, because if we're saying residents, then the residents are probably thinking, well, that's a residential aspect or not. So I just appreciate if we can make that clear somehow and make sure somebody, because that might be a lot to remove, and if it's got to be removed in a short period, the fastest way to do it is with commercial contractors, and
Correct.
They could get pretty busy pretty quick, and so people need to understand what they have to get rid of.
Yeah, and there is, obviously this is abbreviated, but within the full definitions, it talks about HOA managed property, which I think that's probably akin to where there's somebody managing a section of the properties across multiple homeowners. That is required to be removed.
Yeah, that's clear. But like I said, well, for instance, some of the old avenues in Boulder City have grass between the sidewalk and I think it's very diminished, so there's not as much there.
Yeah,
but there
I
is
know what
some,
you're talking about.
And so that's still, I'm not sure everybody understands that has to go away.
Yeah, and we can help you look at the land use codes, because it's basically tied to what the land use is. If the underlying land belongs to the city, it has to come out. If the underlying land belongs to that single family homeowner's parcel, it does not.
Okay, and then I think we need to understand, I think we're all a little confused on homeowners. You know, I was told that even 4 feet beyond the sidewalk in my own yard is owned by the city. So it has to be clarified. A lot of us don't understand exactly what we own and don't own and what we're exactly responsible and what this does.
Yeah,
So
and
the
our
faster we
conservation
understand
staff is more than happy to sit down with Joe or whoever is appropriate at Boulder City and kind of help you guys make a map of everything. So unfortunately, the hard part about this is we have to tie it to something that's uniform for us to implement. So as we implement it, we don't get accused of being discriminatory. The thing that the Legislative Bureau was willing to give us to work with on that was land use codes. So that's why we're stuck in this, what's the land use, to figure out how the property's treated.
Yeah, as long as, like I said, because I think that's the biggest thing I'd like to look at is what is existing, is give people a little bit of time at least to do it. I know we've got to get things done, but we've got to give them a little time. We can't just say, well, tomorrow it's illegal for you to do what you're doing, and we don't know exactly what time we're going to give you to get it done.
Okay.
So the sooner they understand that, hey, this is going to go away, you will have to get rid of this, the faster they can understand and start making plans to get it done.
Okay.
So, because
And we're happy
contractors
to-
are pretty doggone expensive and like I said, we're not even going to have it that many in the future. So that's my biggest harp.
Great. We're happy to work with Boulder City staff on that. Okay. So now we're going to pivot to a little bit more water efficiency outdoors. All of the rest of the valley, except Boulder City, has adopted eliminating Sunday as a watering day from the schedule in the summer. So everyone else has 6-day-a-week watering in the summer. Sunday was the most commonly skipped irrigation day. That's why we chose it. And we did quite a bit of study that grass quality and health was not compromised by dropping a day. Most people have a scheduled day off anyways when their landscaper comes. And we worked with the landscape community to make sure that this wasn't going to be an issue. New development code. So this is where we talk about evaporative cooling. So there are basically 2 types of evaporative cooling. There's swamp coolers and there's cooling towers that are used here. There's some impacts associated with retrofitting both, particularly space. So going from a cooling tower to some sort of conventional cooling is going to require more space. And those are things that we're sort of going backwards at how can we implement more water efficient cooling technology. On a go forward basis, SNWA has passed a resolution saying we should implement a moratorium on the use of evaporative cooling in new construction. And we anticipate that we'll have some guidelines for that by the end of the year that we'll start working with the municipalities to put in their building codes.
So is that commercial or is that, because right now if I understand, I'm looking at this, I'm seeing more commercial.
Yes, so this is commercial construction.
So it's not a regular evaporated cooler for somebody's, like, for instance, I think a lot of people use them in the garage and stuff like that.
Correct. At this point in time, we're not taking on evaporative cooling in the garage. The reality is with water rates going up in most places, it's actually not as much of a cost savings as it was before to use a swamp cooler versus using traditional AC. But right now, we're only taking on commercial property.
Again, I guess if we just let people know that that's something may be coming and they need to, because again, that's another one that might not be as fast to get turned around.
Right.
And so just the sooner that the public understands what is being asked of them, the better off.
Yeah, and again, right now, the only thing we're proposing codifying is eliminating that in new development.
Right, but if we're I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
So but the thing is, if it's like 5 years down the road, you're something seriously looking at, if the public at least understand that this is our next step.
Right. Typically,
then maybe something to think about.
Typically, we've stuck to incentives for existing development, so voluntary incentives. So for people that are looking to change or looking to upgrade, there's money out there for them to do that. The only thing we've done mandatory is that removal of non-functional turf. But we have not taken on any other things mandatory for existing development.
I understand, but we're getting tight, and so
I agree.
And we're doing a quick turnaround on our code, and I'm just trying to make sure people understand is all.
Yep. Again, another one in new development, decorative water features and man-made lakes no longer being permitted. Probably shouldn't have ever been allowed to begin with, so we will live with the sins of our past and make sure we don't repeat them. Going before the Water District and the SNWA Board in July is a limitation on pool sizes. The proposed rule will restrict the development of a residential pool only, not a community center pool, not a multifamily pool, but just single-family residential pools to 600 square feet. Our data suggests that over 75% of the pools installed in the last 5 years are below that 600 square foot threshold. Unfortunately, what we are seeing is pools as large as 5,000 square feet going into luxury properties that are largely not occupied. So this was really a stop the bleeding measure from having these audacious sized pools go into luxury homes. New golf courses are being prohibited in the valley. The Las Vegas Valley Water District has already taken the step to prohibit new golf courses, as has the city of Henderson. We expect North Las Vegas to follow that pretty soon as well. New fountains and man-made lakes are being prohibited across the board as well. So I think, one of the closing thoughts here is water scarcity is the natural disaster of Southern Nevada. It has been historically, for anybody that went to school here and learned about the Anasazi and their presence and their absence, all being related to drought. No one would question earthquake safety standards if you were living in San Francisco. No one would question hurricane standards if you're living in the Gulf. We need to start being responsive to the environment we live in. Even though drought is slow moving, we need to be addressing our water scarcity much more fiercely than we are today.
Is Las Vegas or the Valley looking at any growth restrictions at all?
I think that the growth question comes up very often. And I think the reality of that question is we continue to try through development code to minimize the water footprint of new development to the maximum extent we can. If we had stopped growth at the point where we weren't willing to rely on water conservation, growth in this valley would have stopped in 2000. We would not have had additional homes to build. Everyone that moved here past 2002 moved here on the water that somebody else who lived here before them conserved. We use about 26% less water today than we did in 2002. Per capita, almost 50% less water than we did in 2002. If we are going to continue to grow, we have to be having the absolute smallest footprint on new development. So generally, when you look at industrial development and commercial development, the only consumptive use of water, if they have very smart desert landscaping, is those cooling systems. Unless you're getting something like a bottling facility that we're working to eliminate those through another process. But all of the warehousing distribution centers that want to come here and use mechanical cooling, they have no water supply associated with them, and they create a significant amount of jobs. So we have to stop saying yes to everyone that wants to move to Nevada, and we have to start saying you can move here if you're willing to be a responsible water steward.
I think, because I definitely didn't mean that we should stop growth. I just said restrictions. And
yeah.
So we're not saying it should have stopped in 2000. And I understand, and I think we all appreciate what Southern Nevada Water Authority has done for conservation. But we just, see constant growth in Henderson, and we see constant growth in Valley. And so everybody's been asked to reduce it. So you can reduce the footprint, yes, but you're still using water.
Correct. And that's not our purview.
No, you're not. You're not. It's just you're tied into it a lot better than we are. And I'm just asking. So again, I'm not trying to push back. I was just asking a question.
Gotcha. So this is my last slide with any content. I got a pretty picture at the end. But what we do here is we quantify the water savings associated with every conservation number. And you'll notice that we start in the dark blue at what our projected use is in gallons per capita per day at 123. That's because we take what our current use is, the 112, and we add what we think increasing temperatures are going to cause our demands to increase. We've seen that already. So that's just a little explanation why that starts at 123. And then for each one of these measures that we talk about, we quantify how much water each of those will save. And this essentially is the roadmap to get us to that 86 gallon per day goal. And with that, I'll take any other questions that you might have.
I got a question. It goes back to, a third or fourth slide. This is the best way I can do is show you what I'm talking about. That slide there. The historic average, it has in my opinion, it has a tendency to give people a sense of false hope, because you're talking about a long term. How far back does historic average go? And we're talking about the last 20 years, we've lost a lake.
Right.
So is there any way that can be, the perception of that be adjusted for people? Because they're looking at that and saying, oh, well, maybe in a couple of years, we'll get that 3,000 year flood and get all our water back.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to make it even more complicated, there's two different inflow metrics. So if you look at this one, this is actually using what we call unregulated inflow. I'm going to talk about natural flow because I know the numbers a little better. If we look at the natural flow of the river, the historical average is 14.7 million acre feet. This drought has given us 12.3 million acre feet. The last 5 years have given us south of 11 million acre feet. And we're using 14 million acre feet as a basin. So that's exactly kind of getting to your point. We got to make the math more apparent. People want to make the water problems of the West seem really complicated. They're not. It's arithmetic. We have to use less water in order to be sustainable, particularly if we keep getting hot, dry weather.
Well, and my opinion is we also have to get rid of the hope that it's going to recover.
I agree completely.
Because it's not going to recover. And in my opinion. And the other part was on, just curious, on the next slide, again, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
Yep, that one. We show a huge drop off between now and 2025, obviously, right?
Right.
But is that a hope that we sustain that bottom where it gets down there and starts oscillating in those, in the lower region, the 900 region, or is that because of all the conservation efforts we're taking in consideration? It just seems odd that we're dropping so quickly and then all of a sudden kind of leveling off.
Yeah, so, I think that what you see here is what we call a hydrologic trace. So behind this, there's actually low and high years going in there, which is why you're seeing it bump up a little bit and then come back down. But the reality is when you're at those flat parts, you're not releasing water downstream.
That's what it is.
So we have to figure out a way to manage the basin above the floor a little bit. I think with endangered species, with a delivery obligation to Mexico, with the cities of Phoenix and Tucson and LA and San Diego all reliant on the Colorado River, we have to come up with a way of balancing our uses so that we're not emptying Lake Mead and bouncing off the bottom of will you get water this year or will you not?
Thank you.
Colby, when we get down to this dead pool area, or even above it, slightly above it, what is that going to do to the water quality and the treatability of the water, since we're just using ozone without any solids removal?
That's a great question. We looked into that a little bit. So the biggest thing that our water system lacks is sedimentation basins. And that's because Lake Mead is our sedimentation basin. Right. So the water slows down, all of those solids drop out, and we skip that step in traditional water treatment. As the lake goes down, some of that will depend on flood events, and we obviously don't have any data that low. We don't think we need to augment our water treatment until at least Lake Mead drops below 950. But we're updating our model every month as we see, the lower lake elevations, see how far those sediments extend into the lake, and we're keeping an eye on what, if any, changes to our water treatment may be required.
But certainly algae will become an issue because
yeah, and we saw
sedimentation is not good with that, and plus coagulation is not so good with that. So
yeah, and we've seen a huge drop in our chemical costs just associated with going from
sure.
Accessing the water through our first 2 intakes to accessing it through the 3rd intake. You're getting to that cooler, cleaner water at the bottom of the lake. So obviously, even if we don't have to change our treatment process, exactly what you're talking about, we will have increased chemical costs as the lake goes down.
But even the trialmethanes and all those have decreased some with the new intake.
Correct.
But I know that was a serious problem when we were taking out at 1,000 and 1050.
Yeah.
So.
And we've done a lot of retrofitting to our reservoirs to create aeration and stuff like that. Obviously, we're not having to use it as much now, but that was specifically done to help treat trihalomethanes. And I imagine the lower the lake goes, the more important us being proactive about having those water quality upgrades is important.
So anybody else? Well, thank you very much, and I definitely did not mean to challenge. I was just asking questions. I really appreciate you coming out and giving us updates.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Carr.
Okay, so we will close agenda item number 2, and then we will go to agenda item number 4. So, possible action, discussion, and possible approval of the updated water conservation plan. Do we have that up on the screen? How do you want to proceed with that, Joe, or how was your plan, I should say?
That would be in the agenda packet as number 4. I don't know if that's something that did I not get that up on the screen for you, Holly? It'd be item number 4. Okay. I apologize. Let's see if I can get the scorecard. Well, no, this is actually the item 4 of the packet. You think we can take 5 real quick and I get that put in there?
Well, why don't we actually bring up the scorecard really quick?
Okay, let's bring up the scorecard and then we'll do that while we're...
ask Southern Nevada Water Authority about that.
Yep, good idea. Yes, we could do it from here.
Yeah, because the one thing I was looking at is I was going to ask Southern Nevada Water Authority if they could explain that a little more, and I forgot to ask. The other thing is though where it says that it's unscheduled for fountain codes. Okay, there you go. Can I ask you a question about the scorecard? I guess just a brief explanation would be nice.
Sure. The scorecard, and actually this is kind of still in draft, it was developed for our SNWA board meeting. Our Southern Nevada Water Authority board members asked for kind of an ongoing update on how our member agencies are moving forward to accept and approve the conservation initiatives that were put forward towards our within our water resource plan. So we've been working with Joe and and his peers at all of our member agencies to implement some of the codes that Colby just talked about today, and that's kind of, I think, where we were a couple weeks ago. I know that some of our changes and dates have been updated, and really the final one will be showed in July.
I believe that, so it being technical, that our the fountain codes are in the suggested changes.
Yes.
And so instead of being unscheduled, then hopefully that'd be something that could be updated. Mm-hmm. And I don't know anything about the septic tanks, but I did know. So just trying to get it. So it is sort of how well we're doing and overall, so that's why scorecard.
Yeah, correct. Just to kind of track progress to ensure that all of our member agencies are doing. Colby mentioned that these conservation initiatives really need to be regionally applied so that it's, moving toward taking the same step forward together. So for our board to just make sure that we all are aware and on the same page.
No, that's great, because that's one thing we've been asking for updates for some time ourselves in the committee, and I think the public is what, I think we need to make sure the public really understands what's going on. So we have different views out there and needs to know what has to be done and what is encouraged to be done and stuff like that. So,
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions on the scorecards? Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah. So just kind of going back to item 4 of your packet. So we're able to get that in there. So what we did with the help of SNWA, go through our existing code, anything that was related to water conservation, and bring that to the committee with changes related to what the SNWA board brought forth in December for their water conservation plan, and then most recently the changes to the golf course water budget, and then also the upcoming changes on that are proposed for the limitation of the pool sizes. So if you have this in your packet, what we've done, we've taken what we've discussed at the last meeting. We put those in italicized red. So just to kind of highlight a little bit of the differences when we got to wastewater. Wastewater, and this is from Title IX, Chapter 8, Water Utility Regulations. So under our definition currently, we're saying flowing into any gutter, street, sidewalk, swale, or storm drain in a steady stream of flow for a period of 20 or more continuing minutes. So the committee has, based on discussion, there wasn't an official movement or motion, but the 6 minutes was thrown as a compromise, as a possibility. So that's been put here in your packet. And then it, in addition, added on the water waste, failure to repair a malfunction of an irrigation system or supply line, and then we kind of define what those malfunctions may be, or failure to repair a water leak. And then going forth, and so, okay, there we go, got it up, thank you so much. Yeah, so scrolling back just a little bit, so that was just what I recently discussed. So the red line, this is changes proposed to our existing code in the effort for our water conservation plan. So what you see right there, the change to 6 minutes per UAC, that was discussed at the last meeting when we brought this to the committee. And I can go ahead and finish through, and then we can open it up to discussion and hopefully make a motion on for possible action to recommend to the City Council any changes.
Do you want to go through page, and then it might be easier if you don't mind going through each page, and then we can check to see. We've got 2 members that weren't here last time, so it wouldn't hurt just to go through it.
Okay.
If that's, and then just make sure at the end if there's any questions. So the question I would have right away is to make sure I'm understanding. So it's per us, but how? So I guess overall we'll discuss it. And we would recommend, I guess, at the end that we could just recommend that either we accept the changes or whatever we're going to, motion, we can talk more about that at the end. But right now, I guess, by having that, we don't know what the staff's thought is on that, though.
So staff's thought is to not allow any amount of time into any gutter, street, sidewalk, swale, or storm drain in a steady stream of flow. So staff's recommendation is that's limited for rainwater. So, I think based on where we're at and what we can change, what's in our control, this is very much in our control. And so we can really work together to eliminate this water waste. So that's staff's recommendation. And I appreciate any comments or questions from the committee.
I guess the first one that'll make sure I open it up is that, okay, so this is where it gets confusing, is because, so if we said that recommended change and you're saying staff doesn't agree, how do we get the final product?
Yeah, so the Utility Advisory Committee will advise to what they want to see, and anything we can agree on, hopefully that will be conjoined, but there will be a difference. So here's the recommendations from the Utility Advisory Committee, and here's any changes recommended from staff. So that will be presented to council, and then the council would be able to discuss and act upon it appropriately.
Because I guess here then, I think the 6 minutes was brought up as a compromise, and I thought that one of the points that it was one of the watering times was 6 minutes, but I did see one of the handouts, or one of the mail-ins where it says recommended 3 times a day at 4 minutes. And so that would be one of the ones, I guess, if the committee agrees, would be the minimum that we would suggest to councils, that at least be 4 minutes. And that way it's just, again, what I'm trying to get is that give the residents a chance to understand that it's eventually going to have to be, but right now it's not tomorrow, because basically once that would be put into, if it's put in at 0, then if it's voted in August, then September, they're in violation of any water that goes into the gutter. And again, it's not something they necessarily understand. So that's the only thing I'm trying to do, is just give people time to get familiar. And then if we could change it in 6 months to a year, we get information out, we push it maybe through the utility publication with that Miller utility, just push hard on some of these things that we really want people to do, and then change it. So that way they're not violating something right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, any violations, that we don't have the staff to do the water waste enforcement that the other purveyors have. So, I mean, we do self-reporting with help from the community with See-Click Fix, for various items in the community, graffiti, street lights out. So that's what we would be relying upon, as well as visual evidence from, our meter readers to see if that's, if there is water waste or not. But, as you heard from Ms. Pellegrino's presentation, we're over 600 gallons per day, per capita. And that's apples to apples in how much water we consumptively use and how many people we have in our population. So this is something that we can really actively change. I mean, we'll take any measure towards conservation, I think is good, but just to understand the gravity of the situation that we're in, staff is really recommending that this particular item be designated as water waste and it be not allowed.
When would this be implemented, Joe?
So the plan then is to, based on committee's recommendation, to bring a bill to council at the first meeting in August, with the recommended changes based on the committee. Also, if there's any differences, recommendations from staff. So that'll be presented in an ordinance form, and then the following meeting there would be the public hearing.
So my point is, I think Larry's got a good point to give people an opportunity to get corrections made. Maybe we go ahead and get it passed. I'd like the 0 idea, but get it passed and then maybe not implement it till January 1 or something like that. Give everybody an opportunity to realize the problem and that they have to fix it.
Or could it be implemented in phases?
Or phases.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, for people to accept it, I'm thinking that it might be better to say, okay, we're going down to 10 minutes. I'm just picking a number, but go down to 10 minutes. And in a year or less, we'll go down to 5 or go down to 0. But let's give the public knowledge we're going towards 0. But going back to what you just said a little while ago, Joe, is how are you going to enforce it? I mean, really, you're going to rely on the communities to self-enforce. I fortunately have a bunch of neighbors who will tell me every time one of my sprinklers leak, and that's great. I want to know that, but a lot of people really don't care. You want to get them so they start caring about it. And I think implementing it slowly or in a phased is a little more acceptable to people. They'll understand it better.
Well, If I understand this correctly, if someone is allowing water to flow into the gutter, street, sidewalk, swale, they are given a notice of violation. And during that notice of violation, they are given time to correct the issue. So I would agree with staff in this particular case of 0. There's no reason to be having a steady stream when you're irrigating going into the street or storm drain. So in this particular issue, I would agree with staff on 0.
I am disagreeing with that because it says any water flow other than storm water. There are people on the girly streets that are dumping their pools right now into the storm drain because they don't know where their clean out is for their sewer. And down on Oasis Park, I can actually scoop up 20,000 gallons of water a week of wasted water coming down the gutter. And the wife loves following it all the way back up to find an 1.5-inch hose stuck in the gutter with a pool being drained. So that is a violation. And this is what I'm trying to say. We're going at it piecemeal and with a scatter gun that has a real big bore on it, but we're not looking at implementation in gradual terms. So my problem is right now, so you understand, the statement was made, Boulder City is one of the largest water wasters in the area at X number 100 gallons per day per capita. We've also got the highest density of golf courses, which is allowed to be counted towards that number.
I agree.
So my problem is we're being held up to a very bad light by the density of golf courses we have, okay, and being clumped in with the rest of them as a per capita of how many people we have now, Joe, 16 or 17,000 people. So that is one of the biggest things, because why? 2 years ago, I sat here at this table and I talked about using non-potable water for the golf courses. So we've drug our feet to where we know that in the summertime, our golf courses, the muni course is 1 million gallons of water a day. If we'd have gone non-potable, it's a different scale and a different metric. Okay, they're measuring non-potable and potable water. They're only measuring potable water in this study. That's what I've looked at from SNWA. They're not looking at non-potable, they're looking at potable. So we've got a couple different dragons we got to slay, but by going from 800 gallons per capita per day and water usage 6 minutes in the gutter to 0 is going to be a physical impossibility, because see-click-fix is going to be overloaded. And we're not going to be able to keep track of it. We've got a broken water line, an irrigation line on Veterans that I turned in this morning. It was still running when I came to the meeting. It's at least a 1-inch line coming off a regulated valve down on Veterans, just off of Highway 93, and it's cut a river down through the doggone dirt. Okay, we got to be careful how we're throwing stones at different people, and you got to give them notice before you can implement a regulation or a law.
My point is, they will be given a notice of violation and an opportunity to correct it. So if somebody's sticking their hose down the storm drain, they'll get a notice, and then they'll call the city, and the city will tell them, okay, you need to be putting it down the sewer. So it's not that they're going to get their head chopped off if you see water running down the gutter. They're just going to get a notice.
They're going to modify it to Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Well, the other thing, though, is we do, the point is the pool is allowed to go down the drain.
Right.
So,
now, just to that point, we would invest, and that would be, not water waste. So if that is in fact what's happening, and that's proven, then that by definition wouldn't be water waste. This is for irrigation, so that's what we're defining here.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, sorry, I don't mean to be rude about it, but it doesn't say that. It just says water waste, to waste water. So I think that we might need to clarify it a little bit. And the other thing is when it says that if you have 2 violations, you have 30 days to fix it.
But this is from Boulder City's water system, right? So somebody's pool wouldn't necessarily be Boulder City's water system. That would be like their own individual water system. It's not coming from the connection of the Boulder City's water system for irrigation.
The average resident is not going to make that definition.
No.
They're not going to figure that out.
So
I mean,
Through the water meter.
yeah, it's not clear here. We're just asking if you're going to say that, help to make it clear so when you do get somebody that gets overzealous about it, we can point to, people can point to one way or another. We're just, like I said, all of us, I think, are trying to protect the residents, the things existing. Having things to say from this point on, you cannot do anything new, that's great, and we have no choice. We have to do that. But we have residents and we have things you can't necessarily fix something overnight, and even sometimes 30 days for certain things, like overflow in your sprinklers. Some of the sprinklers, the old sprinklers, so now I got to buy a new sprinkler to make sure that I can get the flow narrowed down. I've got to move the sprinkler so it doesn't flow onto the sidewalk. So it's not an overnight fix. Theoretically, in 30 days it could be done, but it's still tight. I think all we're saying is just give some of us give the residents a chance to do it, so they're not, the neighbors aren't saying, well, you're in violation, even though Boulder City doesn't have the means to do it. The neighbors in some areas are going to get pretty hostile. Could get pretty hostile because you're not getting it fixed as fixed. So I think if we put it at our recommendation for 4 minutes, because that meets. So you're only doing it. You're trying to get your sprinklers under control while you're doing it. Now we got to move. We got to find out what it takes to get so that we don't have any flow onto the sidewalk and into the gutter, and then we move forward to get to, like Andy was saying, as soon as we can.
We already do that. We work with residents who are actively fixing their issue on C-Click Fix. And again, we don't have that enforcement body and the staff and the ability to, go out and, the intent is not to issue the fines here. Okay, so there's incentive programs, so we want to highlight those. So, and this is where we want to be uniform as the rest of the purveyor members, and this is, where we're a little bit different because we aren't reusing all of our indoor water waste. So we don't have those return flow credits. We hope to get to that point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But this is where we're trying to be uniform. So what I would say, after we kind of wrap up our discussion, is let's get the committee's recommendation, and then we'll move on to the other portions of the conservation plan.
If I can, I'd like to just also keep in mind, I would not expect a resident to do something that the city's not going to be held to themselves. So going back to a statement just earlier about a water flow going down, in this example right here, the city's in violation because they haven't fixed it. They haven't gone after it and fixed it yet.
Because it's a technicality, it's not going down the gutter, it's going out in the desert. Okay, it's cut a doggone river down behind the golf course there on Veterans. Okay, the maps are gone from the walls, so I can't show you where it was, but my wife spotted it. It looked like an artesian shooting out of the street, out of the parkway, the landscaping, and just shooting across and cutting a furrow down through the gravel and dirt. So that is not a violation because it isn't in the gutter.
But I guess my point is, let's not ask the residents to do something the city won't do. The city can't do.
And the city is, appreciates any notification, whether it's calling, and we do fix those as soon as we are notified of those, especially if they're serious. So, we have a dedicated staff that, works around the clock too. They're on standby. And so, anything that is reported as water waste or any malfunction on our system is addressed immediately. So,
and I didn't mean to imply that, Joe. I'm sorry if that took the wrong way. I just mean whatever is reasonable either way. And I do appreciate the city does try to, but I think residents also do try. And getting a notice of violation of any kind for a resident is semi-traumatic. It's something. It's almost like the HOA saying, you didn't paint your house on time or whatever. But you get the idea, is to make it reasonable for both the city and the residents. That's all.
So just to give you an idea, going back to historical data that I could find, we have not presented anyone with a violation that they would get their notice and it would be corrected. This is I would put a stark difference between us and an HOA.
I think this is actually, so we need to move forward, I understand, but I think this is the major crux, because what this covers a lot of things that we have. I think the other ones will go pretty quickly. It's just that part of it is I know I'm pushing back, and I think I'm hearing the same, is just trying to give the residents a chance. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to say it shouldn't happen. We're just trying, let's find a way to help ease it in. Yeah, that's the only thing, and I think of the rest of anything else, that's the only thing we're trying to do.
Well, and if you can agree then on a time frame, and then let's look at a time, like whether that's the end of the summer or whether the beginning of the calendar year where it's nothing. So that would be the committee's recommendation to council. Whatever. I'm looking for the best thing we could get that will give us the most conservation. So I think we all understand how dire the situation we're in, and we're trying to protect our resource. We rely 100% on the Colorado River, not 90% like the rest of the valley, and we don't have any return flow credits at this time. So it's what can we do in our demand, and this is where we're starting. We're getting the ball rolling to get the momentum, and then we're going to be going to other measures.
Well, January might be, I think Eileen mentioned, or what somebody mentioned, January. Maybe that's a reasonable place to start, because at least you'd have the fall to sort of get things going. So if you've got to do major aspects, because like I said, to keep it off the sidewalk is not necessarily an easy task, and so you have to move the grass away from the sidewalk. There's things you have to do, and it's not something theoretically it can be done in 30 days, but it might not. So just anyway, sorry. I'd say January unless somebody else says something different.
I like it.
I think January sounds like a good goal.
I can agree, 0 to January.
Correct.
Yeah, and give lots of public notice. And
I agree.
And Joe, is there any way to differentiate between, like we were talking about earlier with pool, draining your pool or whatever? Is it better to put it into your clean outs, or is it better to let it roll down the street? And I would think evaporation, minor as it may be, come into effect if it's rolling down the street compared to when it goes in your clean out. But is there some way that the city can help the residents understand what the differences are and what's better?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want it in the clean outs. I mean, that's where it should go. And ideally we'll get, yeah, I mean, it like Mr. Todd mentioned, it flushes the lines, but at some point where we're getting to a place where then that's not irrigation waste, that's, used in some fashion for reuse. Whether that's us as a community reusing that for irrigation purposes, or, getting it back into the reservoir somehow for return flow credits. I mean, that would be the goal, is to go to the cleanouts.
But if it went to the cleanouts, it would be return flow credit. That's why I'm aiming for
Correct.
Cleanouts. Okay,
Yeah.
and our system can handle it because we've got the storage capacity at our different lift stations out in the valley, Hemway Valley and stuff. But my thing is that I've been harping about this for 2.5, 3 years, and it hasn't happened, so we're still harping about it. And Howard, of all things, what comes out of that treatment facility might not be tolerable to the landscape. Yeah. We might have an instant pesticide / weed killer on our hands, so we won't have to worry about anything.
Right.
Then the big problem is when you do take the lawn out, like my neighbor did just while I was gone for 4 weeks, his trees are dying because now there's no water for the trees. So now he has another problem where he's got to cut the trees down, and then you got no shade. So now what happens? Your electric rates go up. It's just a vicious cycle. There is no answer other than controlled growth and reuse water. We all talk about it like it's great, but you got to understand, once there's no water coming in from the Colorado River, you're drinking 100% reused water.
Go ahead. Okay. So yeah, I think that one of the things is that one of the ones coming up is the pool. So we probably have a few questions on that. So I guess right now, in number 1, then we would just put a down. Does anybody have a suggestion of verbiage to say down to 0 by January 1st, 2023, something like that?
You could accept the red line for 9-8-17 going in as recommended by staff, going into effect January 1, 2023.
Yes.
I so move.
Okay.
Now, it's in two places, so do you want to try to take care of both places at the same time, or do you want to make a motion now and try to get that taken care of?
It's just that one section.
Yeah, we got the motion.
There's two places that has that.
We're on, there's only 198-17.
Yeah, we're just approving this.
Right, but
here.
the same issue going down to zero is also in the water conservation plan.
Yes, yeah, so we'll,
You want to just do it there?
yes.
Okay, because like I said, I think most of it, we had the pool issue, we had this issue, there was just minor ones really. So
Right.
we've harped on this one, but we're trying to, it's more of a idea than not just that aspect. That's why I've been taking so much time on it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Eileen Wilkinson and a second by Howard Anala for recommending to accepting staff's changes for 9-8-17 as redlined going into effect January 1, 2023.
All in favor? Any nays? Unanimously approved. Okay, so I'm seeing then we are okay on the rest of the page one, so we can go to page 2. Then I think on the very top, if we can just say, that's a pretty easy change on the, so that'd be new turf limitations, right? Just say new turf? Is that something we can change easily?
Yeah, I think that's, let's see here. So we had some recommendations from staff internally. So we have the use of turf. We're gonna say the installation of turf grass. And so we do say it in A, new turf installation. So everything is kind of described already as new turf installations in A, B, and C.
Yeah, but most people, when you're looking at something, you're looking at a title. So if I go to 9.818 and I see new turf limitations right off the top, I've got it. So I guess A is going to be right up there. It's going to be nice, but it's just the title tells me right away it's new turf. So I guess I don't understand why it's hard to add, just put the word new in front of turf limitations.
We can look at that. I mean, I think this could help to be, if we left it as is, then as we get closer to the implementation of AB, it's 356, then turf limitations would be kind of defined as non-functional turf, so we can kind of expand on that. But if it's the committee's desire to change the title to new turf limitations, we can look at that if that's something the committee wants to do.
Well, you're looking at adding something here?
No, you're saying change to new turf, right?
Right, but you're saying you're talking about everything here is new turf. There is nothing else in new turf in 9.818.
Right.
We go to pool in the next page. So
No.
So what did you say that would, by not having new turf, would allow you to do?
What I was getting at with turf limitations as it's defined now, in the future, prior to the implementation of AB 356, we can add language with a change in the code of non-functional turf limitations. It keeps it broad enough for us to, right now it's titled turf limitations, and then we've defined new turf, subheaded in here. If we leave it as turf limitations, and in the future we don't have to change the title again. Does that make sense?
If you're going to add it there, I guess, but right now you have the non-turf in the water conservation plan, so you're going to put it back here also?
Yeah, we would go through each portion that we have anything that's affected by the water conservation plan.
Okay, if that's what you're trying to get at. I was just trying to say, okay, sure. So if everybody else agrees with that, then you just do turf limitations and go forward. I just, again, trying to protect the residents and make sure there's no something that with existing that there's confusion. All I'm trying to do.
Okay, and then just to kind of be consistent with the most recent staff recommendations, we're changing the term use, because the use of turf, that's we're saying the installation of turf.
Okay, I'm sorry. Make sure are you saying installation or which? Because
the new installation of turf. instead of use.
Okay, so that's not what's said there now. So are
Correct.
you changing that?
Yeah, so
Okay,
that,
I'm just, because that's not what we saw on our packet.
no, that's what I'm saying, that from new staff recommendations since the packet has kind of been out. So the definition use, if you're using turf, you could be running on it, you know, rolling in it, sitting on it, you know, all the uses of turf. So we're saying instead of use, the new installation, and then everything else is the same.
Anybody have any comments on that? So you would say the new installation, so you'd still maintain that. Well, are you getting rid of the whole thing, or are you still maintaining that which is maintained by mowing? So you're crossing out the use of turf and grass and then putting the new installation?
No, so only replacing use with new installation.
So it'd be,
Yeah, so reading it out, the new installation of turf grass, that which is maintained by mowing and or irrigated by sprinklers or other irrigation means, is strictly prohibited except in new schools, parks, and cemeteries.
okay. So anybody have a comment on that? Let's see. Hey, Greg, do you know if you had to use the restroom? Can we get a vote right quick?
Make a motion.
Okay, so we will so I guess that's that page, because I think we can sort of combine some of the other ones, but we'll make a motion since this is separate from the other one. Somebody want to make a motion?
I move we accept staff's recommendations for the changes to 9.8.18 turf limitations.
Second.
Any comments, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, moving down to Title 5, Chapter 6, Swimming Pool Code. So again, going into what the board will be looking at this month. So 565 pool size limits, and then we left the date as a placeholder, but effective date, the combined total surface area of pools, spas, and or outdoor water features at a single family residential property cannot exceed 600 square feet.
Now, Greg had asked for so you've got their possible depth limitation. So what did staff consider on that?
Yeah, that was considered by staff and kind of based on what would be a typical standard depth. Wouldn't see much changes in depth outside of what the luxury pools would be anyway. So it's staff's recommendation just to stick with the surface area.
Okay, so, sorry, Greg had to use the restroom. So does anybody else have any comments on that?
No, just quick clarification on outdoor water features. What exactly is that encompassing?
Spas, features that are used, that are water, fountains, would be like water features in a pool.
All right, gotcha, thank you.
Now then, so I think the other comment was, since I think this is the last place we really deal with pools, and I'll bring it up when Greg's coming back, is that, if when we're talking about new pool installations, then Greg had mentioned that having it, is that something that we want to do new to have mandatory, that it can be put into the sewer? And is that here, or does that go into a permitting location?
So, can you repeat that for me? I apologize.
Well, Greg, I'll let Greg did it last time, and I'll just let Greg. So, Greg, you had mentioned that this doesn't explain new pool, and if we really want to tighten things up, that we'd want to have it someplace in the pool aspect for that the pools get drained into the sewer, and it's part of the permitting process. So, you can say it better.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Any new pools constructed after a certain date, you have to identify the sewer cleanout for disposal of pool drain water, pool wastewater. That's all we got to do. It's in our plumbing code that it has a cleanout in front of the house, but nobody ever identifies it. So they cut it off, flush with the ground, cover it up, and never to be found again. The problem is, if we're going to take and advise people to put the pool water into the municipal sewer system, they've got to know where the application or the injection point is for the quote-unquote pool water. Because in the hard water territories, Joe, and you've been around for a while, every 2 to 3 years you got to drain a pool because you cannot treat the hard water out of it. So unless you bring in Aqua Pros or somebody like that that delivers purified water for the first fill-up of a swimming pool, everybody's filling up through their water meter. So we've got to have a way to inform the individual when they're building the pool, because they have to come in here for a permit process. They pull the plot plan out of said property and advise them where their cleanout is going to be installed. And if there is not a cleanout in a residence, then a cleanout should be included as part of the pool construction. You're talking $40,000 to $50,000 for a pool. You're talking no more than $4,000 to install a cleanout, 3-inch cleanout or 4-inch, depending on your system, to where you can put the pool water into it. So that's what I'm saying. In other words, we're talking about if you run the pool water down the gutter, it's permissible, but no, it's not, because that's potable water. Okay, that's reuse water. I'd love to see it in our doggone low-flow sewage system, because it would flush our pipes, especially in the historic district, where the slope and the gallonage is much less now than when it was first constructed. So it's actually a flushing system. It's kind of like when Colorado River was being discharged water out of Hoover Dam to flush the lower tributaries and recreate the banks and everything else. So that's what we're trying to do. So as to the pool thing, pool size limits, I agree. There'd be one added item. Municipal sewer cleanout be identified and marked on plot plan. And that would be what I'd put in there.
Would it be unreasonable to add or to put that it's tied directly? It could be the drain system tied to, instead of just identifying it doesn't ensure that it's going to be used.
You need an air gap. Okay, that's a public that's a plumbing code deal. That's uniform plumbing code. You need an air gap from. Otherwise, it would actually anti-siphon. It would siphon the water out of the pool and really cause problems. So you need an air gap if you're going to do that. I just recommend that this cleanout be identified, or the injection point be identified on the property as part of the pool plan application.
So if we could add that here, would be helpful. And I think then anything if there's a pool permitting section, then it would be if something could be put into that also.
Okay, we'll work on identifying that. So just to kind of get your language, Greg, so this would be like a 5-6-6 is what you're suggesting?
Yes, and it also is put into the plumbing code, uniform plumbing code. You know, that we're probably using. I'm sorry, the language has escaped me because I've been out for so long, but I think it's called the Uniform Building Code that we're adapted to on all our construction projects here in Boulder City. And there's a plumbing section in there. And we can, because it's only going to be used for the pool, that's the only time it has to really be identified, unless the homeowner wants to know where the clean out is on their property.
We do have the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code identified here, and forgive me, I'm not familiar intimately with that. But do we know? I mean, I could do some research to see if that's in that code, if it links up.
It might be, but so you got to understand that international pool code is international. There's only western states that have the problem with water conservation and water shortage. So I'm saying that for Boulder City, if you go to take and apply for a pool permit, you're going to have codes that Boulder City has exclusively for new pool construction, and I think that just needs to be added. And all that has to happen in reality is when you're looking at the pool constructor is looking at the property, he just has to identify where the sewer cleanout is.
I do see the Southern Nevada amendments to the 2018.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in there because there's too many codes overlapping that we have to just kind of standardize.
So just so I'm clear, we'll get that information straightened out, but the 5-6-6 that you're suggesting is going back to the wording to make sure we got that right, and we'll get it in one motion.
It should state that the sewer cleanout be identified on the property for the future draining of the swimming pool water. Now, the thing that I got to defer to Howard on this, but some of your saltwater pools, is that going to jack with the sewage system? Okay, so in other words, whether it be fresh water with chlorine or it be a saltwater pool, it's all going to be fine to go down that 3-inch or 4-inch line. And that is probably, the water out of the pool for practical purposes is probably better treated than some of the water that you're drinking across the United States. So if we can get it into the system, it's considered, what we're calling about is reclaimed or reused water, gallon in, gallon out.
Okay, so going back to that, the title that you had mentioned. So I got sewer cleanouts be identified on property for future draining of pool, and just, maybe title that sewer.
I think we should say pool water.
Pool water.
Yeah.
Or possibly pool drainage?
No, because that's stormwater runoff. That's a different animal.
Why not use the same language you have out there already for, spa pools, spas, and outdoor water features?
Okay, very good.
Does that work, Greg?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Good call.
I do have a question.
Sure.
From the presentation, it looked like SNWA was recommending no new water features. And this would include allowing a water feature of at least 600 square feet.
So I think the idea here, it's tied to pools in the sense that it's like some kind of
lazy
waterfall,
river or
waterfall, anything that would be used in human use water feature, like a pool spa.
Okay, so like a little fountain or something that's in your front yard would not be covered under this section.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so Greg, just so you know, the staff believes that the depth isn't a issue in the pool size. So,
so just to clarify, so we looked at going to the limitations on 600 square feet. The pools that are going to be at that depth are going to be fairly uniform and not to the depth that we expect. So the deep depth pools are going to be the only ones that are the ones typically over 600 square feet anyway. So staff didn't feel it necessary to put a limit on a depth.
Yeah, that's fine, but it also has to do with the limitation of the 600 square feet limits the amount of slope you can put in a pool. So if you have a diving pool, per se, it's got to be vertical and deep. So I can build you a 600 square foot diving pool because I used to be aquatics person, deep high dive, and that pool was 20 foot deep, vertical wall straight down. It wasn't over 600 feet.
Yeah, I only brought it up, so.
Yeah, the reason we were talking about the depth, right, is because the problem is that I found out is back a long time ago, your depth was indicative of a diving board. And that's why there's no diving boards anymore, because people were cracking their nose on the bottom of the pool as they made it shallower to accommodate the size and the gallonage of the pool. I'm spoiled. I've had several pools with diving boards, and the one I've got right now, I measured it just for curiosity. It's 14 foot for the top of the diving board to the bottom of the pool is 14 foot. And then it slopes up. So when you dive, you come out and you go up, and it's a pretty good sized pool.
Gotcha. So I guess I'm just getting ready for the motion, so I think we can do another motion. I think with the water conservation, we hopefully can make less motions, but to clarify these, we might as well do another motion. So go ahead.
On the SNWA proposal, it's on this page, new proposal, proposed rules will restrict size of residential pools to 600 square feet. So it says residential pools right in the SNWA document. So we're in line with their document.
Okay, thanks. So Eileen, that covers what you're, okay. Okay, so does anybody want to do a motion for the pool code?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt the pool code with the added section 5-6-6, which instructs individuals on how to drain the pools and where to drain the pools, if having to drain them.
What about 5-5 or 5-6-5 as well?
Yeah, it would probably cover, but see, yeah, we'll go ahead and also 5-6-5, which
okay.
Also covers pool size limits.
Okay, great.
I'll second.
Any comments?
I wanted to question whether the way it's written in this ordinance or this code, should we exclude the municipal pools or community pools? Because the intent of the SNWA's regulation is just residential pools? Correct.
This is in line with that.
It says single family residential property.
Right.
Where? Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. And are we going to put in an effective date? I think it should be immediately.
Well, are you allowing for the city council is that what you're suggesting, city council put in the date?
I was leaving that up to the committee, as a recommendation. I didn't want to get any kind of folks that were in the middle of a pool building, but I mean, it's I think going back to January 1, where we had the first one would be good. I don't anticipate an influx of greater than 600 square feet pools. I hope not, but
I think that's reasonable. If somebody had thought about it, and then I think that's reasonable. January 1st, 2023.
Okay, so amended to include that date?
Yes.
Yes. Shannon, do you need that restated, or are you good? The motion? Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we had discussion. So everybody, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to Chapter 14 of Title IX, which is the Boulder City Water Conservation Plan. Here we've got additional red lines, page 4 of 10, non-functional turf. And since the definition of non-functional turf kind of derived from that committee, we're referencing where that definition comes from on the website of SNWA. On the waste of water guidelines on page 5 of 10, at the very top, we've got allowing water to flow or spray, and the red line changes here is to eliminate the for more than 10 minutes and to be consistent with the previous motion would be to keep it at 0 and effective January 1, 2023.
I do have one question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Back on the definition of non-functional turf. If we put in the definition of functional turf as defined by SNWA authority at this one, then we're tied to whatever they do in the future. Do we want to do that, or do we want to state their definition as of today?
Can I add to that really quick? So what that code is, what that section relates to is the functional and non-functional turf definitions. That was defined by the AB Assembly Bill 356 in the last session, which required the Southern Nevada Water Authority Board to set the definitions of functional and non-functional turf, and then and have that applied to the valley wide of what comes out and what gets to stay. So in this case, as it relates to all existing turf, the Southern Nevada Water Authority Board will always own those definitions. So I think it makes sense for the code to point back to SNWA.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's that clear on the home site.
Sure. So you could, every member agency is doing this a little bit differently, how they're implementing the codes. It can point to the water district did it where it points back to SNWA, so that if something ever changed in the future, they didn't have to go change their service rules. Henderson kind of took a different way. They're planning to just copy and paste into their codes the definitions that were approved by the SNWA board. So Boulder City could do it either way. They have either options. I think this was prepared as a pointing to SNWA, but if you want to add clarity, then absolutely you can copy and paste those right in there.
Well, the two things, or three, is the first one, just like I said, if it's just SNWA/turf, wherever it's at, because like I said, when I went there, I'm not sure that was super obvious where it was.
Sure.
I think I had to click around a little bit. And when I'm looking at a document, I hate to have to go to another document to confirm.
Sure.
It's just one of my really big frustrations. So if you got to make it even harder by going there and then clicking around to figure out, at least if that's the easiest way to do it, at least have it where it goes someplace where we can find it. The one thing that's one of the reasons I ask about the residential, because I think in the basic aspect of the turf, at least a couple weeks ago, you had to go down to another section that said residential wasn't part of it. It wasn't clear that residential wasn't. You had to sort of look around a little bit.
Sure.
And so that's some of the things that I'm just trying to make it as clear as possible. So I would like, if nothing else, like appendix, like I mentioned last time, just to say, here's the definition. And the easy thing you do is say, here's the definition, which can be modified by S&W or the state, however you want to say it. And then clarify that for clarification, here it is on Southern Nevada Water Authority / such and such. It's extra work, but it's easier for the person trying to understand what's going on.
Yeah. And I'm happy to provide those so you can pop them right in.
Yeah, I personally would like to see the definitions as they are now, cut and paste in here, because, and this is I'm just grabbing something out of the air. Let's say SNWA in 5 years decides that cemetery grass is non-functional. Does Boulder City want to go along with that without having the ability to change that? So that's just my concern, but I'll go with either way.
Yeah, the only thing is, like I said, if you do an appendix, because since it is pretty lengthy, you might want to, it's going to not fit well on this page. So I don't know what's the best way to do it, because that's why I see, one of the reasons I understand is there, because it is a lengthy explanation, but unless you can say see appendix such and such, so it still would be in the document where you're looking at, not in another, if you're looking online or if you're going to another document. So I don't know if staff wants to look at that and see which is a better way to do it, and then we could just say, to help clean up the definition, or make it as easy to follow as possible. I think that's what we're all trying to say.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that if that's something we could fit right here on the definitions. Put that in here. If it's say more than a page, we'll add an appendix.
Yeah, because I think I just seen what's on there and what's in the slide. I think it's going to be more than a page, because there is quite a bit of information there. But I would like to sort of try to clarify somehow what residentials are expected and not expected to do, because I think that's still unclear. So I don't know if it could be clarified here or not, but residential seems to be still a little bit unclear, especially with the median turf. We might have to try to see how much of Boulder City still has that in the housing area, the residential area. Does anybody else have any, so Eileen, anybody else have any suggestion on that? Do we just want to, I guess, work with it because we won't have another opportunity. We would have an opportunity in August, but if the council is voting on, so it would be presented on the 9th of August.
Yeah,
and then, so we wouldn't be able to change anything, correct? Because they would be, UA would be voting on, they would be putting it into the agenda on the 9th as is. Is that what I understand? Could there be changes made in the next council meeting?
It's my understanding that the changes cannot be made.
So if something, unless I guess you sent it, how do we best answer this?
So I think we got it pulled up right here. It's got non-functional turf, streetscape turf, frontage, courtyard, other turf, and certain HOA managed landscape areas. And so I think we could put that definition in. You want me to pop it up? Yeah, we can actually pop it up on the screen if that would help. Just give us just a moment here. And then that's what we can put in as the definition here, and just we'll put the reference to snwa.com, but then list the
I think that's
current definition.
Doing both, I think, I'd prefer if that's possible, because then they can clarify it and it can be changed if need be.
Yeah, in this section, I'm okay with whatever, staff thinks is best. I just wanted to bring out that possibility that staff might not like.
Yeah, that way we know what we're voting on. So where was that at in the SNWA?
Yes, this is just off the.
Yeah, this just, is it?
Yes, I found this off the SNWA's website.
Okay.
I literally typed in non-functional turf, and this is the second search result that popped up under their website. And under their removing useless grass section, it explains the law. The AB 356 prohibits the use of the Colorado River water delivered by the Water Authority members agencies to irrigate non-functional grass. And it continues to talk about the non-functional grass, and then a little bit lower down on the page is where they provided their definitions, which is what's showing up on the screen now.
Okay. So you would put in the definition, is it the 3 lines? Is that what I'm understanding? I can't quite read it, sorry. Yeah, it looks like 3 paragraphs, so that's what you're talking about.
Yes, right there, there's the non-functional turf definition, and then under is 3 more definitions for streetscape turf, frontage, courtyard, interior, and building, adjacent turf, and certain HOA managed landscaped areas.
So do we want to put functional turf down too? Is that asking too much? Because so it's just non-functional is what is not functional?
Yeah, I think we want to just kind of stick to the non-functional turf, because that's the only turf that we're looking at, regulating. As far as defining that, there is recommendations for the type of turf in that previous one that we went through on new turf. But I think here for water conservation, we're only wanting to define non-functional turf.
Okay, I don't have anybody else. Okay, thank you. I guess I was talking out loud. Thank you. So you were suggesting putting those 3 paragraphs into this, and so I guess that's So we could, well, again, I think, do we want to, maybe we should make a because I think the rest of them, I don't think are that hard. I didn't want to have to make motions for every page. So what does the committee want? Do we want to make a motion on this since this is a little bit more to it? Just stating that, I'm not making a motion, I'm just saying that a motion could be stated that we're just going to add the definition for non-turf that is in the SNWA, or the UAC recommends. Do we want to do that, or do we want to just wait? Go ahead, Eileen.
I move that we add the definition of non-functional turf from the SNWA website into the definitions of Chapter 9-14-2.
I second. Any discussion? No discussion. All approve, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Did you get that, Shannon, or does anything else need to be? Okay, thank you very much.
I got it, thank you.
Okay, so then you're just going to take on the page 5, starting on 914-3, waste of other guidelines. Joe, you were just saying that we would add the January date on that, right?
Yes, yeah, so for this particular item to be consistent, so for 9-14-3, if it's the desire of the committee, allowing water to flow or spray directly into a public street, alley, or right-of-way, gutter, or drain, that, and then leaving it as that, effective January 1, 2023.
I have a question about this.
Go ahead.
What's today, the 6th? So 2 days ago, we had our parade. Does this impact that parade? Because there's a lot of wetness in the parade. And it gets sprayed directly in the street. And is this going to impact it? I don't know about how those laws interact with each other.
I'm just looking here, just seeing, because trying to figure out if it's a single family or what the guidelines are. So Boulder City residents are subject to the following waste of guidelines.
But the residents are the ones participating in the
No, I know.
parade, right?
I agree. So I'm just trying to figure out.
Hang on.
That's an interesting question.
No, because it says, it is unlawful for any owner, occupant, or manager of real property. We don't know where the water came from, so we can't take and apply that to the 4th of July parade. So it has a definition as to what we're talking about. It's unlawful for an owner, occupant, or manager of real property.
I'm not seeing the difference.
Well, in other words, the wastewater guidelines is based upon an owner, occupant, or manager of real property. What you're talking to, there is no owner, manager, or occupant of real property where that occurs.
Yeah, and we do list Boulder City residents are subject. So the idea, as Mr. Todd's mentioning, we're referring this back to people that live here at their homes.
Right.
So
if you think about where the water usage is at, there are no properties fronting that street right around the corner from where the water event occurs. As long as it can get down to a sewer, we're fine, because we're collecting stormwater. It was a sudden downpour.
I think what he's saying is there's a specific spot, and I'm not familiar with, but the park has a specific spot that they do that war at. I mean, the parade.
That area is 5th Street.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just 5th Street.
Right, okay.
And there's a bunch of residents on 5th Street that are using their hoses to do this. That's why I'm asking, and I could see the conflict here.
Well, if the occupants are using their hose, then somebody could say, yes, they were wasting water. That would, if they're using a hose from their yard, then it could be. I was thinking of just people with squirt guns and doing like.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm really getting to is this has kind of been a tradition for the town, right? And a kind of a huge draw as well. There's a big business side of this as well.
If you want to say, with the exception of the 4th of July water fight on 5th Street, you know, here.
I don't know. I'm just trying to.
Let's broaden it up. 4th of July event. That would be a very safe exception, the 4th of July event. Okay, so we're not defining what it is. We're just saying the 4th of July event will be excluded out of this water restriction guideline, wastewater restriction guideline.
I think we can kind of circle back and just get a legal opinion first before we present that, if that's something that the committee is really concerned about. You know, on the legality, because again, this is for, you know, Boulder City residents. But I do see your point.
Yeah, and I'd like to just point one thing out is if it draws a lot of news crews, stuff like that. And if the rest of the world is trying to save a cup of water and we're throwing thousands of gallons into the street at each other, the perception, which is 90% of how people's going to make their judgments, is not very good. And I am not a proponent of stopping it, but it may be something that we have to consider because it's not a small amount of water. It's a lot of residents with a lot of water. So just something to think about.
Yeah, I haven't personally looked at the data on the water meter, you know, to see hey what that amount is. But you know, it's staff recommendation just to leave that as is and prohibit that, not to add anything for sake of confusion.
I agree. I would like to point out, though, that on number 3, it doesn't say it's unlawful to allow water. And I'm thinking we should add that. And point out that number 4 does identify the discharge of swimming pool water.
Eileen, I guess what it says, so maybe you're better at grammar than I am, so maybe I'm missing something, but on A, you've got Boulder City residents are subject to the following waste of water guidelines. 3 is saying allowing water to flow, spray directly.
Yeah, so number one says it is unlawful for any owner, blah, 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 to do this. Number 2 says it shall be deemed unlawful to permit excess use. But number 3 doesn't say it is unlawful.
No, so you got a consistency issue.
Yes.
I see what you're saying. Okay. If you want to be consistent, be safer.
We could leave the prohibited portion there, if that would help. Or allowing water to flow or spray directly into public street, alley, or right-of-way, gutter, or drain is prohibited, and just eliminate the time frame.
Yes.
Okay.
Effective January 1st, 1923.
Right. Okay.
Or 1923. Boy, yeah. I'm going back. 2023. So I shall move.
Well, on that page, well, let's finish, make sure you finish it. Just trying to make sure that we're being consistent in what we're trying to accomplish. So on 914-5B, it says for the purpose of managing the water supply, blah, 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 specific watering days and or schedules may be assigned. So it's no longer may, it is being assigned. Isn't that correct? So is there, I think we need to make it stronger, because that's what we are saying that Boulder City is adopting those schedules. I'm just want to make sure everybody's agreeable and the city agrees.
Where are we at, Larry?
We're at the very bottom. So you've got B, right at the very bottom, for the purpose of managing the water supply distribution system, specific watering days and or schedules may be assigned by Boulder City staff. And we are assigning specific water days, so it's not May anymore. It is.
I disagree. We're being assigned a watering schedule from SNWA, not Boulder City.
Well, but my understanding is we're following it, so that's
But
the
then just
distinction.
drop that. Don't put Boulder City in the middle of that mix. And we're following SNWA's recommendation on watering schedule. I get mine all the time. Every year, they send out a new card that says what my zone is and how many days I can water in the whole 9 yards.
Well, but let's make it clear. If we're getting down to the nits and
Right, and that's why I'm saying drop Boulder City out of that paragraph. It shall be assigned by SNWA.
Okay, so it'd be like Andy says, shall be shall be assigned by SNWA. Okay, so
Right.
so that second line would be schedules as just as assigned by SNWAs.
Can we finish up that first? I know there was a motion, and it
Well,
wasn't.
I'm
It wasn't
trying
second.
trying to limit the motions if we
Oh,
if we
okay.
don't have to get this whole page done.
I got you. Okay.
So we're on the same page is what I'm trying to do. Unless it makes it easier for you, Joe, to have motions for specific aspects.
Yeah, I think we agreed on that. Let's just kind of get that, and then move on to the next piece.
Yeah, we'll follow it through.
Okay, Eileen, if you had a motion, were you starting on a motion for the?
I made one.
Okay, we repeated. I'm sorry, I must have interrupted. I apologize. I was just trying to get the whole page. So let's go back to 914-3.
914, I move that 914-3, number 3 be changed to allowing water to flow or spray directly into a public street, alley, or right-of-way, gutter, or drain shall be prohibited effective January 1st, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Passes unanimously. Okay. So now if we can go back to right there. So B, so we're talking about the second line. I think the easy fix, if I'm hearing everybody, is we say in place of may be assigned, we say shall as assigned by Southern Nevada Water Authority. And I guess we can still leave that as provided that the effective water users have been reasonably notified. I think I don't see why that hurts to leave that there. Does that make sense, Shannon?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
Okay, so B, second sentence, second line, where it says may be assigned. I think what I'm hearing, and we'll see if it is that would be as assigned by SNWA, and and then you would cross out may be assigned by Boulder City staff, and then I'd say I don't know if the other hurts to say provided that the affected water users have been provided, because basically they have been. And we just want to make sure that everybody else is, Greg's got a good point that SNWA sent it out. And I think Boulder City has, but it might not hurt to include that Boulder City reinforces that we have adopted SNWA's schedule. Okay. I'm not sure that, I have not understood that was exactly the fact. I've been doing it, but I didn't understand if Boulder City it was mandated. So Andy, did you want to take, or are you okay with just leaving the rest of it there? So I'm just saying may be assigned by Boulder City staff to be replaced by as assigned by Southern Nevada Water Authority.
No, I'm good with that. That's what it should be.
Greg, do you see anything else?
No, sorry. I'm just trying to read the details at the end here.
Anybody else have any comments?
That'll ride good with the SNWA statement.
I'm just trying to put a little more meat to it since we're really trying to, that to me, it firms it up. So the citizens can't say, well, we don't have to apply, it's right there. So Shannon, Okay, you good?
Yes, I got that, thank you.
Okay, so do you want a motion on that one too, or you want to, I guess since that one's clear, so I said, so, I make a motion to change section 914-5, section B, to as assigned by, Southern Nevada Water Authority instead of maybe assigned by Boulder City staff.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would like to take on the whole section while we're at it and amend the motion to also remove number 3D. Sunday is a free day for all groups. And change it to no watering on Sundays.
Right, yeah, I wonder.
I second that too.
Was that clear, Shannon, or okay, so I don't know if we need to redo the motion, if that's good enough. Okay. Yeah, I think that's the changes I had too, so that makes it clarify the Sunday, and so for that section. Okay, anybody else? So we got a first, we got a motion, we got a second. Any more discussion? Okay, everybody in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody not in favor say nay. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, moving along. So at the bottom of page 6 of 10, under 9-14-6, landscape material restrictions, the addition A1A. So at the end of that paragraph here, you could see, I'll go ahead and read it. Single-family and multifamily homes are prohibited from installing new turf in common areas of residential neighborhoods. This restriction shall not apply to public or private community parks. The installation of new turf is prohibited in residential front. The addition is side and rear yards. Any discussion on that?
Well, the one thing, and you got, just so I understand, and the use of drought-tolerant landscape materials is encouraged in residential front yards, so that's been taken out. I guess I'm trying to make sure I understand, if we want to understand so this is landscape material restriction, so I'm assuming that's why that was taken out, but I don't think there is anything to encourage what to do in landscape in this section. We have to go someplace else to understand what the city is recommending. Am I missing something there that in this section?
No, so you're saying to keep that in instead of striking that out?
Well, what I'm saying is either keep it in and or point to the other location that somebody can look at to say this is where you go to find the landscaping materials if you're changing something or new. Because there is something there, the city has posted, I believe, and has had asked for questions from the public to say what new materials, what new landscaping, what qualifies, and what's the best plants, etc., to use. And so what we're doing here is we're saying this is the restrictions, but there's really nothing pointing to people can go, where do I go to put the right stuff in, for lack of a better word. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that was just for simplicity. So if there's a reason that the committee wants to keep that in there, the use of drought-tolerant landscaping materials is encouraged.
I don't see why you wouldn't encourage, why it wouldn't be kept. I don't know. And then again, is there any place there we can say is then see section such and such or code such and such for drought tolerant landscaping or city recommended or something like that, someplace where they know to go.
Yes, I know the Water Authority has recommendations on drought tolerant landscaping. I'm thinking for our purposes, if we want to leave that language in, we say, and the use of drought tolerant landscaping materials is encouraged, and period. And if there's a better place that we can point residents to get that, we can. Hopefully they'll be able to to get the information that they need. But instead of saying in residential front yards, we at least reinforce that language and say that it's important.
Hi, good afternoon, committee members. Brittany Walker, the city attorney here. I was listening in, and I just wanted to provide some overviews of what the purpose of an ordinance is. An ordinance is essentially legal authority, and so an ordinance provides the city with the legal authority it needs to govern. And so there's a lot of perception that an ordinances should be concisely drafted, and the purpose of them is not to direct the public. That can be done in other avenues. So I was just hearing some of the comments about the public may not know where to go to find the landscaping requirements. That wouldn't be appropriate to include in the ordinance. We, of course, if we adopt this ordinance, we would be doing a public information campaign to explain to people what the changes would be, what they can do and cannot do going forward with landscaping. That would be a part of a public information campaign that both SNWA and I think the city would put on. So just wanted to provide that additional context for an ordinance. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you, Brittany.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So I'm just curious, where do we go? Right, where it says the installation of new turf is prohibited in residential front. Why do we have all that other stuff? Why can't we just say it's prohibited in residential properties? Installation is prohibited in residential properties. Is there, I mean, some way to simplify it. To me, the more you put in there, the more I try to look for a loophole. Okay, I can put it on my roof, you know. There are people out there. But my point is, instead of getting, and being specific on every little spot that you can't put turf, to say, you got a residential property, you can't put turf in.
Can you scroll up to the bottom section of 6? No, go the other way. I've got a question for you. It says single-family and multifamily homes are prohibited from installing new turf in common areas of residential neighborhoods. That flies in direct conflict with SNWA's landscape NTRAC definitions, which says functional turf is multifamily properties. So we can't restrict it if it's being used by the families of multifamily residences. So, go ahead.
Sorry. So those definitions apply to existing turf. So those definitions, what you're talking about, the non-functional turf, those definitions were established to address when the legislature approved AB 356 and said all of this grass needs to come out, and it's going to be on the SNWA to figure out what can stay and what can go. So one of the definitions that what you referenced, that multifamily definition, can stay in some quantities. But what this code is referencing is everything new. So everything new, all new single-family residential and new multifamily, and residential are prohibited from installing new turf in common areas of residential homes. So it's like almost, there's kind of two areas of turf that can...
At what date does this apply? That's what I'm getting towards. In other words, you haven't defined when this new rule is going to come into effect, or ordinance, or whatever we're going to call it. So does it get the January 1st, 2023 moniker on it? In other words, when does this apply? Because right here, as part of the NTRAC definitions, it doesn't say you can't replace existing turf that's been burnt out from kids playing on it. That's new installation. By definition, that's a new installation of multifamily turf. So you've got a conflict of rules.
Well, when we consider, if there's existing grass and a park needs to replace it because
But that's a park, that's not a multifamily. That's where my problem is. We've got some places that are multifamily that are 4 units. Mm-hmm. Okay, individual units. To me, that's multifamily.
Sure.
But the problem is it's not defined as multifamily. You know, one of the examples, you weren't here to hear it, but one of the examples I had is we've got couple fourplex units, 4 individual residences that have one water meter serving the whole property. Okay, so we've got to make sure that if we're going to put this all together and do this, we've got to fall back to SNWA as the godfather, because they're our purveyor for water, and make sure we're not in conflict, and we can get brought up to say, hey, this is not flying in the same vein that we're being told to do by SNWA.
Okay.
So we got to put a date on this.
Right, so like constructed after.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And that's what I don't see. It just says it's prohibited.
No, I think, well, if we start at the very beginning, landscape materials for new residents shall be limited as described below. In the case of building permits issued prior to the adoption of developers' rules, the permitting time. So, but I agree, again, all we're trying to do is protect the people that have something existing, so it's not any major conflict, and just make sure it's clear that what's new. So either, basically, I think what we've said before, Greg, is anything that doesn't have a date, as soon as this is signed, that's when it comes into effect.
But that's what I'm trying to do. We're putting dates in some sections of this deal, and we're not putting dates in other sections.
Right, I think new residences, though, I mean, that's a new build.
Correct, but the problem is if a person is misconstrued as, define new construction. Okay, new construction is when I regrade my area and I put down new turf. Okay, that's new construction.
But this is in the case of building permits issued prior to the adoption.
Right.
And
that's what I'm saying. Do we date this section, or do we just say once it's adopted, anything that's dated in this ordinance is that date, and anything else is by date of adoption?
But it says in the case of building permits issued prior to the adoption of these restrictions, the development rules at the time of permitting shall apply. So that would be, homes, any new residence is permitted prior to when this future ordinance would be gone through and accepted by council. So I mean, it's staff's recommendation to keep it as is new residences. I mean, the reason why we're explicit in the side and rear yards is because we're only limiting grass and turf in the front yards in the past. So if we just say yards and folks understand, well, yeah, we already know it's not in our front yard. We want to be explicit and say front, side, and rear yards, all yards, so they know, and it's new residences. So it's very limited quantity of due to our growth ordinance in that. So it would be any home that had a building permit once this ordinance goes into effect.
Can we put, so we do say on up there new residence, but can we just repeat it on A1? So it says new residence landscape restrictions. That way I think it helps clear. You'll see it as you start into A, you clearly see that it's new residential. See where I'm at, Joe? So you go A1. So right now, A1 says residential landscape restrictions. So if we just say new residential landscape restrictions, that makes it a little clearer. So you're repeating yourself from the top line, but I think it helps. I don't see that it's going to be that much of a problem.
Okay, so you want to add new in front of residential?
Landscape restrictions,
okay.
Yeah. And I think that clarifies it. So I think then what I'm hearing you'd prefer to leave what's there, so they can understand what was in the past and go forward.
I hate to say it, but I don't think that's grammatically correct.
I think so too, but
which way?
The way, I know what your point is, and your point's correct, but when you're saying new residential, what you're saying, new residential landscape restrictions, you're saying these are new residential landscape restrictions. What you want to say is this is new restrictions for new construction, new residents.
Whatever grammatically correct, I just want to make sure that it's, I'd like to see it there in one, so it's totally clear that that's what it is. So whatever grammatically is correct.
Okay, so making it grammatically correct would be landscape restrictions for new residents. For new residents.
Okay.
Throw one more out, Joe. Residential landscape restrictions for new construction.
Okay.
Doesn't new construction broaden it?
No,
What about remodeling?
that's resident.
New
If
residential
you're gonna put
construction.
grass inside your house, go for it. It says residential landscape restrictions for new construction, not remodeling, new construction.
Okay, so residential landscape restrictions for new construction. Okay. That works.
Yeah, I'm just trying to help clarify, so.
And then just to keep the committee's eye on the ball here, I know we're at page 6. We've got a few more pages to go. We're limited in time and what we can conduct business for this meeting.
Yeah, I think hopefully the rest will go pretty quick, but yes, thank you very much for the reminder, because we're going to have to really skim through the rest of the agenda items. So okay, so we got A1, and are we keeping the use of drought tolerant, or does the staff prefer not to? Now that we've talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, now that we discussed it, we had recommendation from the city attorney. It's staff's recommendation to leave that out, leave it as is.
Okay.
As redlined.
So the only thing we're adding there is just the A1 section. Just the A1, just the new construction.
So residential landscape restrictions, quote, for new construction, and then the rest is remaining, right?
Okay.
As redlined.
So we can either change it, but unless everybody else has looked at it in a lot more detail, I've looked at it in detail, but I think the rest of the pages aren't that much. Eileen, did you? I'd almost say, let's just say from 9, agree to the changes made from 9.14 to 6 when we get through it. So let's just go through it now instead of making a motion for that one thing, just keep moving forward. Okay. So now we're on 914-7.
Okay, so the changes on 914-7 includes restrictions on non-functional turf. And again, this is in line with AB 356, and that's as of January 1, 2027, Boulder City will not supply water to any customer who uses any portion of the water served by Boulder City for non-functional turf without an approved waiver from the Southern Nevada Water Authority.
Yeah. And that's law. It's just, again, we can't put it here, we were told, but we do need to get out, and that'll be a next step, is just to make sure everybody understands what that exactly means, and that's still what's a little confusing, but I think that follows the law, if I understand correctly, so I don't think there's much to be changed there. If anybody has anything.
Did you guys vote on the last one?
No, we're not. We're going to try to go all the way through.
Okay.
Thanks, though. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Keep me honest. Okay, so I'm okay. Anybody else have anything on 914.7B? Okay, we'll continue to 914.8.
Okay, 914.8, water budget for golf courses. We've added section A, any public or private golf course using city supplied water shall be on a water budget and shall be exempt from time of day and assigned watering day provisions. And then under section B, effective January 1, 2024, the water budget for all golf courses will be 4.0 acre feet per irrigated acre.
What is it currently? What do they use?
6.2.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then scrolling down.
Joe, hang on a second, go back.
Oh.
Right there, hold it. The water budget for all golf courses will be 4.0 acre feet per irrigated acre per day, per month, per year?
That's per year.
Okay.
Yeah, can we put it?
So is that assumed or is that written?
We can add that.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Yeah, good catch.
Annually.
Or annually, yeah.
Annually.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we've got that noted. Thank you. Okay, moving down, section C, we've removed municipal from golf courses. So golf courses will be water budgeted based upon acre feet of water. For each acre currently irrigated acreage will be calculated based on irrigated areas as determined from aerial photography and field verification. And then for section E, We have Boulder City will not serve new golf courses constructed after date and 2022 potable or non-potable water.
So SNWA is saying no new golf courses, and is Boulder City saying we will only have new golf courses if they use effluent? That's what I'm reading between the lines here.
I'm thinking that, I mean, if this is something that you think we can eliminate, or just say no new golf courses.
If we're following SNWA's aspect, and I think that's on the scorecard, and I think the scorecard says that we're following it, and this one doesn't, then we either have to have it here or someplace else.
Okay.
So I guess it would just say, like I said, Boulder, no, whatever's the proper terminology. Boulder, there would be no new golf courses or whatever.
Boulder City will not serve new golf courses constructed after.
Well, it would be served, or just be, you wouldn't, Boulder City, the new golf courses are prohibited. It just seems, what was SNWA's term? What was it? What am I missing SNWA's terminology? Just might as well keep it consistent.
In terms of what SNWA said, it wasn't necessarily any kind of specific language. It was just that no new golf courses. How that's been implemented by the members have been different. So the water district doesn't have jurisdiction over what can be built within its service area. It can only have jurisdiction over how it supplies water. So the water district approved that it won't serve potable or non-potable water, which includes effluent. So that's how the water district did it. I think Henderson's code outrightly said no new golf courses. So if it was a no new golf course type language, then maybe, does it go here? Does it go under another development title? That's up to staff.
But I guess then if it goes someplace else, if you want to make it totally clear here, I guess, then It's just that, Boulder City will not serve golf courses any water. That's that way there's no confusion that they'd be potable none. So it'd be Boulder City will not serve new golf courses constructed after January 1st, 2023, or you want to put it in, I don't think we have anything on the board books anyway.
That'd be a sneaky golf course, yeah. No, I think that would work.
If you want to do that, then it just say Boulder City will not serve new golf courses constructed after, in the period, will not serve. And then you just take off potable, non-potable water.
Okay. And that's after January 1, 2023? Okay.
Because I don't think anybody's got it on the books now, so I don't think 6 months is going to hurt anything. Well, yeah, about 6 months. Okay, any other comments go to 914-9, or does anybody have any comments? So I think 914-9 is pretty obvious.
Right. The only other kind of internal discussions we've had on that is if we converted the municipal golf course to from potable to the use of effluent, we would likely need to require the use of man-made lakes to accommodate that irrigational change. And that's the only kind of feedback I have from staff on that.
So you have the exception, unless you need to refer to the exception above, because you have the exception, man-made lakes where all or part of the water is used in whole or in part as function of reservoir for the golf course shall be included in the calculation of golf course water budget. So, but it's an exemption, but you're allowing it. So unless you want to point from 914-9 back there just to make sure it's clear. Am I missing something?
No, I think you made your good point. Yep.
I thought that exemption was it had to be approved by SNWA.
Which for the any man-made lake?
The water, the exceptions, I don't remember exactly what it was.
Oh, gotcha.
So the exemption is for water budget.
But you're looking at it, so this is for the water budget, but you're still talking about a man-made lake. It opens the door.
It's following the function of the reservoir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, yeah, well, swim at your own risk.
So whichever you guys want to do, I guess I don't have a problem, but or at least point to it, so it's, at least you see, because you did bring it up, it was, actually, it exists now. And so if that's something that needs to be, that you can possibly use effluent water, and you want to make sure it's clear, then it depends on if you want to add that now or later.
Okay.
So I don't, Howard, did you have something on that?
No, I don't. I was just looking at what you're saying, but there was mention that non-potable water would be effluent. And we kind of struck that part out of on E there.
For new golf courses, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we're talking about you're talking about the 2 existing golf courses, or even possibly the 3rd, if I'm understanding.
I think it's fine with the way it reads.
Okay, let's leave it as is and move on. Okay. So moving on to 9-14-10, operation of ornamental fountains and water features. B, fountains and water features of less than 10 square feet surface area at single-family residence. We're saying that those are exempt. And then we've taken out the fountains or water features under section C.
And then you've taken out, I'm just going to help you move along.
Yep.
You've taken out E and
E,
G.
G.
So I think we didn't really have any major thing. I was just trying to figure out, again, how to protect existing residents. But if it's an ordinance, then what you're telling us is this is what happens, and then we try to figure out some of the stuff later. So
You have fountains and water features in place prior to September 1st, 2009.
Right. So, okay. So anybody have any concern with 9-14-10 fountains and water features?
Okay.
And so this is what I was saying would fit, I would believe, into the scorecard, is then that Boulder City is scheduling it. Fountains.
So this would outlaw any existing water features that were in place after 2009?
Anything over 10 feet.
Yeah.
That's the way I read it, anything over 10 feet.
That's 2 feet by 5 feet.
No, 10, so if you go to they're allowing a 10-foot, they're allowing a 10-foot.
Water features less than 10 feet.
So then if it's more than 10 feet.
10 square feet.
Yeah, 10
so
square feet, anything
that would
bigger
be
than that.
2 foot wide by 5 foot tall.
Or is it, yeah, I'm not sure, but that's what I think that's what we interpreted it last time, or we were trying to get confirmation, is what happens to those existing fountains.
So we're not aware of any existing.
I am.
Okay. We can definitely examine that if you want to add the January 1, 2023.
Yeah, I'm thinking we shouldn't outlaw something that someone already has. It should be any new water features.
Okay.
But in every other thing, we're not outlawing anything that's existing. We're outlawing future. So I'm.
And there is the exemption in G. So.
But they were in place prior to September 1st, 2009.
So do you want to just change that to December 31st, 2022?
Sure.
Okay.
Or January 1st, 2023.
Well, that makes them exempt prior to that date.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So you're suggesting, so you don't want to get anybody that already has existing, right?
Yes.
So kind of being in line with implementing these by January 1, 2023, we can change in G September 1st, 2009 to December 31st, 2022.
Yeah, I think before it was, they had that because of all these other things. Now we're just saying, period. So that makes sense.
Yeah, the reason I was going to ask you about that one, Joe, is the Cascada Golf Course has that waterfall fountain that runs down on their property, and that would basically have them shut that off.
Is that a bad thing?
Well, that's probably a next step, so.
The water's coming out of Boulder City for that place, okay? So they had a bad leak in it for a while that was coming underneath Highway 93, and it was actually flooding stuff out, so they got it sealed. But I'm just wondering if that water feature, by them shutting that off, would that affect their membership?
I get that, but honestly, I think we're already at the next step. That's just my personal opinion.
Brittany, you're weighing in?
Yeah, I just wanted to provide some clarification. Some of this is existing language. So this is, we've already had a water conservation code, and the fountains and water features in place prior to September 1st, 2009, that's already existing law. So anything after that wouldn't be allowed. So we wouldn't want to change that date because that's been existing law.
Okay, but we're restricting we're changing the square footage of the existing water features from 25 square feet down to 10, so that would affect existing.
Yeah, I think there could be a clarifying change there. I think it probably would have to be a separate sentence, but
yeah, or effective.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, these are not retroactive. The law, whatever is going to be passed, can only apply prospectively, and so it would only impact new water features that would limit them to the lower square footage. But I think that you make a good point, and that could be clearer. But I would just say with the 25 foot, you wouldn't want to change that date because we want to make sure. So we'll have to update that.
Yeah, just do something in here that would ensure that existing water features are exempt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
This one says fountains and water features utilized, and it doesn't say new, so we do need to figure out, there's somewhere in that 9-14-10 has to put a little more clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And is the committee kind of feeling the January 1, 2023 timeframe?
If that fits, if Brittany's okay, if that fits the law.
Yeah, we can work on a clarifying change, and a lot of this, I still have to review this ordinance. I haven't gone through and made certain changes, so there will be I will be looking at it in detail as well for some of the language to make sure it's clear before it's introduced as a bill. So, but we can add a sentence that makes it clear that the 10-foot requirement isn't. And to your recommendation, if you would like to recommend that it not be effective until January, we can recommend that, provide that recommendation to City Council.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it. So if we're going to make a recommendation and then fly through the other agenda items, we'll probably have to go through. Go ahead, Eileen. Do you have any comments, Greg?
Just referencing, I think we can do it.
Okay, so Eileen, you have a suggestion?
Oh, I'm not exactly, where did we stop off the individual?
Yeah, so 9-14-10 was, or I'm sorry, that's our last one. That's where we're at. So I think we were at 9-14-6 is where we started.
So I move that we approve 9-14-6 with the addition of, under number A1 for new construction, 9-14-7 as is, 9-14-8 under B, add the word annually at the end of the sentence. And under E, add the effective date of January 1st, 2023, except 9-14-9 as written. 9-14-10, except that with clarifying language being added to B that clarifies that existing water features are exempt.
Does anybody have a second? Any discussion? So I'm sorry, did you talk about E too, to make sure I understood correctly? You covered the E. This one here. On page 8. Page 8.
Yes, I had
You did, okay, sorry. Okay, so any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. It's passed unanimously, so thank you very much. Okay, so we will quickly go through Joe, was there anything else on that?
Nope, there are no other items on that one.
So we will close item number 4. Item number 5, we really don't have enough time to discuss unless anybody has any major, so I'll open 5 really quick for possible, what's that? 5, okay, for possible action, discussion and possible action of committee goals, priorities, and deliverable results. Did anybody have anything that they reviewed before they came today? Any concerns? So the only thing that I will show is that does show some of the things that is upcoming, so we can go into the upcoming meetings and talk about that more in August also if we have anything. Joe, was there anything on there that you wanted to bring up?
I just want to thank the committee. You know, this is in line with Goal 3, and so it's really important the work that we're doing, so I appreciate everybody's efforts today.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll close item number 5, go to item number 6 for possible action discussion regarding potential agenda items for upcoming utility advisory committee meetings. I'll start really quick. I guess one of the things is that we need to confirm that August 10th is available and that the committee members are available on August 10th to meet at, it looks like 1 o'clock again.
I will not be here.
I believe Marty, I think, is back. Eileen, are you going to be available?
Yes.
I will be available. Andy? Greg?
I don't know yet.
Okay, we have 3. We should be able to, so we'll have to confirm again on that one. Again, it wasn't an existing date, so people might have, it's not the first week of the Wednesday of the month. But if we can reserve that date, I'd be appreciative. And then I guess, as you did last time, if you could send a blank copy and ask people if they're available, would be helpful.
I will do that.
Okay. And then, so I think in doing this, I think we started it, but I want to make clear, did you get a chance to talk to the city manager about a city manager update?
Yeah, and that's something, if we want to get that on the agenda for August, we can look at that, if that's what the committee would desire.
So that's what I'd like to see what we can do and go from there. So now so the 3rd is not available because this room is still being under construction. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So just clarifying that. And again, we would only have a 3-hour meeting for that day. But so I think what we've agreed to is that normally we probably have for possible action, we have the minutes. We have now in August, we'll have is August or September? Because September, hopefully we will start the 5-year capital plan again. But it'd be nice to start talking about how the fiscal year 23 capital program has started. So is that something we can do in August? Does that give city staff enough time? Or do we need to put that more in September?
I mean, it can be part of the ongoing CIP.
Okay, it'd just be something I would like to see, because I'm not sure that Josh's, I guess, I'm not sure that online one is going to be clear enough to go from end of the year to beginning of the year. It might be nice to have a little bit additional documentation is one of the things. I still have a little hard time, because you have to get the full picture. You've got to scroll through every single line. You've got to highlight each one. Whereas if I've got a spreadsheet, I can glance at it and understand what's going on. So just saying. I think that's my major comments. Joe, did you have any? Then I'll bring it back to the staff. Back to the committee. Sorry.
No, I didn't have any other questions or comments, but just to clarify, to get your kind of request, additional documentation for the fiscal 23 CIP projects, separating those out.
Well, no, because you're going to want that. That will now be in that digital, right? You'll just combine that. But if there's additional data that makes it easier to follow, like I said, otherwise you've got to highlight on each one. So maybe it's just me. It was just if there's something else that has the new information. Maybe we just use that, then we go from there.
Okay.
Just, like I said, to me, looking at that digital data, there's nothing to compare to past, because you really can't download that thing. It can't download it, so this is what's happening right now, and I have no to go back to. So I've got the data from the city manager report, and I have that, and that's really all have to go on now as far as the capital programs.
Yeah, I think as we use it more, it will be a real valuable tool to kind of show in time, how projects are moving, and the 23 projects will have the 23 in their beginning of their title. So you'll be able to easily identify, okay, this is a 23 project that started 23, that kind of thing.
Okay. And quickly, so going forward then is, I think the rate review is a little more, so we can't discuss it. It's not on the agenda, but I think a rate review is something we want to look at. We do have in the goals a rate review, and we've suggested October. Was it? Yeah, October. We had that right in for a rate review workshop. So whether that be a secondary meeting or a primary meeting, something we can talk about in August or possibly September if something goes wrong. But I think the rate review is going to be it's going to be something we need to look at sooner than later. So I just want to make sure that is being thought about. Anybody else have any thoughts or things that we want to push towards anything sooner? Talk now or bring up, so otherwise we'll make sure in August that we keep looking forward to what we want in the fall, etc. Okay, we'll close down number 6 and go to public comment. So if there's anybody that has any comments, please call in at 702-589-9629. One more time, so the phone number is 702-589-9629. And just as a public comment, so what I understand is that we do have our next meetings scheduled in September and October, the regular timeframes. So if everything goes well, we will go back to the first Wednesday of the month. So, and we'll confirm that next time, but just so everybody gets a heads up on that. We'll just give just a tad bit longer, then we'll close it out. So again, there was no comments in either way. Okay. So hearing no comments, having no comments called in or emailed, then I will make a motion. So we'll close out the public comment period, the last comment period, and I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
Everybody in favor, say aye. Aye. In favor, say nay. Aye passes. So we're, what? Oh. Okay, so we're adjourned at 3:54. Thank you.